Part 19. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 187. Chapter 183 Parasites. Something feels wrong, Luo Guang stopped and said when he was less than 50 meters away from the village. Aiden nodded. She also noticed something strange and said, "It's too quiet, and the birds on the ground are probably vultures or other scavengers." It was already evening, and normally people who went to the village should have returned to prepare dinner. But the captain's footprints did not change in direction. It seems that they did not find this problem and went straight to the village. Luo Guang looked at the unchanged footsteps on the ground and felt a little uneasy. This was because he sensed that there was danger there. Unlike Luo Guang, Ada was thinking about finding out what was going on and wanted to find out if there was anything valuable inside, such as a virus. "Then shall we go in?" Although she was confident in her skills, Ada was not alone now. She naturally had to use her female advantage and let the person next to her who seemed to be attracted by her beauty help her explore the way. Seeing Luo Guang's hesitant expression, Ada decided to try to persuade him first. If he was still hesitant, she would think of other ways. There are many injured people on the plane, and it is too dangerous to sleep in the open air. We need to confirm whether it is safe here and bring the injured here, otherwise several seriously injured people may not survive tonight. The wounded were not moved to a safe place because Luo Guang and his team did not find hard enough trees or other materials to make stretchers. In order to prevent secondary injuries during the movement, they could only move the wounded with care and carefully transfer them to a temporary camp slightly away from the wreckage of the plane. Since Ada said so, Luo Guang did not insist. Anyway, before the rescue came, where to go is not right. And he was also a little curious about what happened in the village. "Then let's go, be careful." The two walked side by side. Ada pretended to be scared and walked behind Luo Guang consciously, one step behind, ready to run away at any time. Luo Guang saw through it but did not say anything. He did not express any opinion on Ada's behavior. Instead, he had the expression of a flower protector. The houses in this tribe are basically one-story adobe houses made of mud, stones, branches, and hay. There are several plots of land surrounded by woven low fences, which are probably used by the tribesmen to keep some arable animals. The fences in these places are broken in several places. Luo Guang only saw some bloody hair inside. The two walked into the tribe. There were a lot of bloodstains on the ground, but Luo Guang and Ada did not see any other active creatures except the corpses and scavengers. Because the traces on the corpses had been destroyed by the vultures, Luo Guang did not disturb the scavengers from eating, so as not to be resented by those things. Although Luo Guang and Ada had many questions after entering the tribe, they tacitly did not speak and walked lightly, but it was obvious that the scavengers had very sharp eyes and issued warnings when they saw Luo Guang and the others. However, these warnings did not attract anything, and Luo Guang and Ada took a detour when they saw this. Seeing this, the scavengers did not scream anymore and continued to eat the feast given by God. Luo Guang and his companions continued to go deeper. The captain and his companions probably also found that something was wrong here. After they came in, their pace slowed down significantly. Although there were many footprints here, most of the African tribesmen did not wear shoes, or wore those magical tire shoes, so the footprints of the captain and his companions were still easy to identify. However, Luo Guang looked in the direction of the footprints and found that the captain and the co-pilot seemed to have separated in front of a corpse. After thinking for a while, Luo Guang pointed to the captain's footprints on the ground and pointed to the direction of the captain's footprints. This action was easy to understand, and Aiden nodded. The two of them bent slightly and followed the footprints to a small earthen house. After looking at each other, Luo Guang knocked on the door gently, and Ada immediately stuck to listen to the sound inside. However, there was no movement from inside, and Ada shook her head. Seeing this, Luo Guang made a move with both hands to push the door open, and Ada nodded in agreement. Luo Guang took out a small flashlight, and then gently pushed open the door made of branches. This small mud house of the tribe has only one window, and there is no light inside. I think these tribesmen should live a very primitive life. The internal structure of the mud house is very simple. There is only a straight road after opening the door. After walking to the end and turning left, there is the remaining space of the small mud house. This room should be lived by a bachelor. There is only a bed made of hay and cloth on the ground, followed by some bottles and jars. In the corner, Luo Guang saw the figure of the captain, but the captain's condition was a little wrong. He shrugged his head and blood flowed from his shoulder. Under normal circumstances, Luo Guang and Ada should be anxious to check on the captain's condition, but at this time, both of them stood still and looked at the captain. Something is wrong. I'll go to the door to guard it. You can see what's wrong with the captain. After saying that, Luo Guang immediately set off, but as soon as Luo Guang turned around, he saw Ada holding a machete in his hand and pointing at him. This machete was obviously made by someone in this village, but it was unclear where Ada found it. Ada put away the cowardice she had shown before and said, "Go and see what's happening with the captain." From the beginning, Ada had been keeping an eye on Luo Guang's situation. Seeing that his reaction was almost the same as hers, and that he had contact with people from Umbrella, Ada felt that Luo Guang should have also experienced biochemical crises, and his identity was not simple. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Captain. Are you okay? Ada turned hostile, and Luo Guang pretended to be desperate and shouted to the captain. Shut up, go and see. Ada was slightly frightened by Luo Guang's sudden shout. She knew that the other party was doing it on purpose, but he was still useful, so she just asked Luo Guang to shut up and follow her instructions. Luo Guang heard Ada's words, but he did not take action immediately, but looked at the captain. The captain responded to Luo Guang's shouting, and made a low muttering sound in his mouth. Suddenly, his body leaned forward and stretched out his arms to support himself on the ground. Ugh! The captain vomited all over the floor. Luo Guang moved the flashlight. The pool of stuff that the captain vomited was covered with blood and black liquid. After careful inspection, Luo Guang found that there seemed to be small insects wriggling in the liquid, emitting a rotten smell. What is this thing? Although Luo Guang's body did not have any physiological reaction, he still felt a little disgusted. Ada also noticed this situation and immediately suspected that the small insect was a parasite. After vomiting, the captain seemed to feel much better. He leaned back to the corner of the wall, squinted his eyes and looked at Luo Guang's position. He said in a weak tone, "Is it Luo Guang?" Luo Guang responded. Although the captain seemed to be conscious and rational, he did not approach rashly. Ada on the other side saw the situation and did not ask Luo Guang to go over to check. Luo Guang asked the captain what happened several times, but the captain kept repeating the sentence "just now," which was very weird. Unable to obtain intelligence in this way, Ada began to threaten Luo Guang to go over to check the situation. Luo Guang pretended to be helpless and walked timidly towards the captain. Then, when he was a little away from the tip of the tribal machete in Ada's hand, he jumped up and broke through the wooden board on the window of the mud house, successfully escaping from Ada's clutches. The sun was about to set. Although Luo Guang shouted in the room, it was still the same outside. There were no living creatures except the scavenger birds, and there was no sign of the corpse moving. "What's going on?" Luo Guang muttered. Although he didn't hear Ada's movement from the house, he chose to stay away from the room where Ada was immediately. Looking at the escaping Luo Guang, Ada cursed angrily, then took out a flashlight, sterile gloves, test tubes, and small pliers from her shoulder bag, and collected the small insects still crawling on the ground. Originally, there was a satellite phone in Ada's small shoulder bag that was specifically used to contact the HCF organization, but because Luo Guang had done something, she could not contact the rescue now. Luo Guang did not throw away Ada's satellite phone, but slightly changed the settings and put it in his backpack. This was a new channel for Luo Guang to learn more about the HCF organization. Now Ada was holding a tribesman's machete in her hand. She found it behind the door when she entered the adobe house and closed it. She was not afraid of fighting alone. Since the tool man who followed her ran away, she had to do it herself. The captain was still muttering that sentence. Ada placed the machete flat on the captain's chin and raised the captain's head. In this way, even if the captain suddenly attacked, she could directly stretch out her arms and chop off the captain's head. The captain's eyes were red, there were obvious black spots on his face, and drool was flowing from the corners of his mouth. Ada, who was observing the captain's situation, did not notice that the sun had quietly set. On the other side, Luo Guang did not leave the tribe directly, but followed the co-pilot's footprints and successfully found the co-pilot. The co-pilot, who had originally looked like an elite, was now holding his head with his hands, looking terrified, and he didn't know what they had encountered. "Hey, cheer up, what happened?" Seeing that the other party was in better condition than the captain, Luo Guang hurriedly asked. Hearing someone talking, the co-pilot slowly raised his head, and when he saw Luo Guang, he actually shed a few tears and said, "There are monsters in this village." Perhaps because he saw a normal person who could communicate, the co-pilot relaxed for a while and couldn't hold back the tears of fear. "What monster?" Hearing Luo Guang's question, the co-pilot began to tell what happened after they came to this village. "When the captain and I saw a village, we went there excitedly to ask for help. But when we got there, we found that the village was full of dead people. In order to confirm the situation, the captain and I drove away the vultures and checked the body. As a result, a snake-like creature flew out of the body and bit the captain directly. I was scared and ran away. I searched several houses and finally found the house without the body. No wonder the co-pilot's footprints were so messy." Fortunately, Luo Guang saw the footprints left by the co-pilot when he came out at the door of another room, so Luo Guang didn't go in to check and waste time. "What should we do now?" The co-pilot's mind was still in a mess, without any idea, and he asked without waiting for Luo Guang to respond to what he described. "Burning this place is the best option, but to be honest, it is not easy to burn this village clean. There is mud between the mud houses, which is a natural fire break. And those scavenger birds seem to be a way for those insects to spread, and the source is unclear. Luo Guang can only report this matter and let the Red Claws or other anti-biochemical organizations come to solve it. Let's leave here first and return to the camp on the other side of the plain." Although no water and food were found, it was unpredictable to encounter such a thing, so Luo Guang thought it would be better to leave here first. "Can you get up?" Luo Guang asked, and the co-pilot nodded. Although his legs were still a little weak, he still stood up. The two were about to leave when they heard some noises coming from outside the door, so they hid quickly. The person who came in was Ada, and the co-pilot had an impression of Ada, a beautiful woman, and stood up from behind the bunker at the first time. Luo Guang sighed and stood up, but Luo Guang did not say anything about Ada's previous threat to him. Ada didn't say much. Now the situation was different, and she switched to a harmless look and said, "Have you found the co-pilot?" "I also found the captain, but he is no longer alive, and there is a snake-like creature coming out of his body. It's so scary." Luo Guang thought that Ada had finished talking about the matter here, but he didn't expect Ada to continue. "There is one more thing. After dark, those corpses stood up and looked like zombies." Ada deliberately said the word zombie in order to see Luo Guang's reaction, and Luo Guang's reaction was surprise and fear. But Ada didn't believe Luo Guang's reaction, and speculated that Luo Guang was calm and fearless at this time. This reverse inference is also almost right. Luo Guang is indeed not worried about the threat here. When he saw those bugs, he had confirmed one thing with the system, that is, whether his current ability can solve the parasites that invaded his body. The system's answer is naturally that it can be solved, which gives Luo Guang enough confidence. After hearing Ada's words, the co-pilot hurried to the window of the room and looked outside. There were no electric lights in this village, but the sky was clear and cloudless, so the co-pilot could barely see things 5 or 6 meters away. After a few glances, the co-pilot quickly moved away from the window and asked, "Those zombies are wandering outside. I saw a lot of tentacles sticking out of their bodies. Is it the same thing as the monster that bit the captain?" Luo Guang asked. The co-pilot nodded. In fact, he didn't see it clearly, but since Luo Guang asked, he didn't think much and nodded directly. Ada was very smart. Based on the conversation between Luo Guang and the co-pilot, she deduced the general situation and made the same suggestion as Luo Guang: "It's not safe here. Let's leave quickly while it's not too dark at night." The situation became more and more unclear, and Ada frowned. She hated situations that were beyond her control. After saying that, she turned around and left without caring about Luo Guang and the other person. Luo Guang and the co-pilot looked at each other and hurriedly followed. Asterisk. Thanks for the votes. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 188. Chapter 184 Night Attack. These zombies in this small African tribal village were named parasitic zombies by Luo Guang in his heart. Luo Guang had never seen the things that came out of the body, but he thought that the small bugs that the captain vomited should be the larvae of those parasites. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. If it weren't for those little bugs, Luo Guang would have mistakenly thought that the tentacle-like things protruding from his body were snakes. The length of the adult worms of these parasites outside the body is about 10 to 20 centimeters, but the length inside the body is unknown, and the width is about 1 to 2 centimeters. Luo Guang observed carefully and found that when the 3 of them passed by the parasitic zombies, the parasites that were exposed first turned to point at the position of Luo Guang and others, and then the parasitized corpse slowly turned around. Then walked towards Luo Guang and others. None of these parasitic zombies moved by running. They all walked slowly, stumbling like the oldest zombies Luo Guang had seen in film and television works. But Luo Guang did not underestimate these parasitic zombies because of this. These parasites must have their own special methods to invade other people's bodies and reproduce. Otherwise, it would be too strange for this village to fall. Luo Guang also had some guesses about the clues to the fall of this village. According to what the co-pilot said, one thing is certain, that is, the movement speed, agility, and flexibility of the parasite are much stronger than when parasitizing on a corpse. In order to survive and reproduce the species, it is necessary to find the next host. These parasites should have the ability to move independently from the corpse. While observing the current situation and collecting various information, Luo Guang calmly followed Ada to escape from the village. During this period, Ada did not cause any trouble and seemed to have no interest in those parasitic zombies. Look. Even Ada's running speed was a bit fast, which made the first officer very uncomfortable. However, the first officer kept looking at the 2 people in front of him, and he did not dare to stop, for fear that Luo Guang and the 2 would leave him. Although it was dark, Luo Guang and Ada both had a good sense of direction and did not encounter wild animals. They successfully returned to the temporary camp with only the flashlights in their hands. Hancock was relieved when he saw Luo Guang and the others coming back, and asked several questions in succession. Where is the captain? How is the situation? Have you found food and water? In fact, Hancock had already seen that Luo Guang and the co-pilot were empty-handed except for Ada, who had a machete in his hand. But when he saw Luo Guang's backpack, he asked with hope if he had gained anything. When the first officer heard Hancock's words, his eyes darkened, but he didn't speak. The captain died. Not only Hancock, but everyone around him fell silent after hearing the captain's sacrifice, and the atmosphere in the temporary camp became very heavy. The situation is not good, food and water cannot be found. Luo Guang saw that Ada had no intention of answering, so he could only answer Hancock, but he did not tell what happened in the village, because telling others about it would only lower the morale of the camp. Oops! Suddenly, the first officer thought of something and said quickly, "The only flare gun is still on the captain's body." Luo Guang was a little surprised. He quickly looked at the waist of the first officer and said, "But weren't you the one holding the flare gun when you left?" It was the relatively young co-pilot who was looking for the flare gun on the wreckage of the plane. When the two left, Luo Guang also noticed that the flare gun was hanging on the belt of the co-pilot's waist. The first officer was also anxious. The flare gun was also very important for calling for help. He quickly said, "Not long after we set off, the captain asked us to give him the flare gun and said that he would decide when use. I didn't see a flare gun on the captain. It might have been lost somewhere." This matter was more important, and Aiden no longer remained cold and silent. After recalling the captain's situation, she said, "But the plane wreckage here is so big, the rescuers won't be able to find us." Someone said something to encourage morale. The first officer nodded and said, "There is no definite date for when the rescue will arrive. We have to make plans." There was no nominal leader in this temporary camp, so the first officer decided to hold a small meeting to discuss it first, and the others had no objections. Having a plan is better than everyone having their own plans. In addition to these four people, Luo Guang, Ada, Hancock, and the co-pilot, there are 3 survivors who can move normally. There are a total of 8 injured, including 3 slightly injured survivors and 5 seriously injured people. However, the situation of the seriously injured people is not optimistic. It is hard to say how many people will survive tonight. Maybe Luo Guang will find that a few seriously injured people are not breathing when he wakes up tomorrow. "Let me start." After returning to the crowd, the first officer stood up again, resumed his previous elite appearance, and directly became the host of the meeting. Luo Guang added some hay to the fire, but the others did not respond, waiting for the other party's next words. The first officer asked for trouble and did not complain. He expressed his thoughts: "Tonight we will stay up all night in this temporary camp. Although there is still some water and food on the plane, we still have to prepare for a rainy day. We need to continue tomorrow. Just send someone out to look for food and water." Although the first officer looked a bit annoying, he was still somewhat genuine and the ideas he proposed made some sense. Then, the co-pilot pointed in the direction of the village and said, "There is a village 3 or 4 kilometers away. Although something happened, some people settled there, which at least shows that there is a fresh water source nearby." This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. But what if the people in this village rely on digging wells to get water and use groundwater? That village is not right, Luo Guang asked. "What's wrong?" Hancock asked curiously. Then the co-pilot and Luo Guang each said a word, and then they told the story of the village. After hearing what the two said, everyone fell silent. "Are those zombies dangerous? Since it's so close, is our camp safe here?" A young man raised his hand and asked. This more active young man called himself Bed. He had just completed the Wilderness Survival Challenge in the Congo rainforest. After a period of rest, he was preparing to travel to Israel, where the environment is relatively dry, to relax. He happened to encounter this bad thing, which gave him an opportunity to continue to develop his advantages. The co-pilot rushed to answer, "Those zombies move very slowly, and generally they should not be able to catch up with people." Hancock said, "In that case, I think this place is still good, and we can find a lot of useful things for survival in the wreckage of the plane." "Co-pilot, can you please confirm the situation of the wreckage of the plane?" Luo Guang asked. "I have checked and confirmed that there is no risk of burning and explosion." "From what you said, Do you want to move directly back to the plane? At least there is no wind leaking on all sides, and it is far away from the ground, so there is no need to worry about snake bites. If we encounter hyenas or other beasts, we can also defend from a high position. When Luo Guang made this point, he deliberately ignored the injured. Bed said, the four elements of survival in the wild are water, fire, food, and shelter. We have fire, but we haven't found water yet. But you just said there are villages nearby, so we can probably find fresh water nearby. As for shelter, I agree in principle to go back to the wreckage of the plane. This is indeed not an ideal shelter. Some people agree and some people disagree. As expected, the kind-hearted Hancock retorted, with a life ladder, it is easy for the seriously injured to get down, but it is difficult to carry them back. We can't just leave them here, right? That's right, we can't leave them behind. Another middle-aged man nodded in agreement. His physical condition was not as good as that of the young people, so he was naturally worried that others would leave him behind later. Luo Guang did not insist on his own idea, but he understood that if the rescue came later, the seriously injured would sooner or later not be able to hold on, and could the seriously injured really endure the pain? You know, there are very few painkillers left on the plane. In this case, let's decide on the shelter and stay here. The co-pilot collected everyone's opinions and planned to make a decision directly. Bed interrupted quickly and said, wait a minute, I have an idea. In Bed's view, the shelter is not just about lighting a few fires. The current situation is different from his survival in the wilderness alone. The situation is more complicated, so Bed was just thinking about a compromise. Based on the current situation, Bed gave his professional opinion and said, in fact, we can use the broken part of the plane as the windbreak of the shelter, and then use the metal pieces dropped by the plane to surround the shelter, or make an early warning device to prevent wild animals, so that the wounded don't have to be lifted up, and it is better than the current place. The co-pilot accepted Bed's opinion and said, then you and I will go to see the situation of the plane later and choose a better place. Let's decide on the shelter. Next, let's see how to divide the work and move the camp. Luo Guang didn't want to fight for leadership, and the other party's decision was no problem, so he pushed the meeting topic forward. Bed didn't care who was the leader, as long as that person listened to his advice, he would say he had received it. Luo Guang was quite satisfied with the current situation. At least there were no pig teammates in the team for the time being. Then he worked with others and finally brought the wounded to a good place selected by Bed. The survival was basically completed. After the food and water were distributed, everyone took various rests, and those who could still move took turns to be on duty. Dang, a crisp sound rang out, which was the early warning trap installed by Bed being triggered. Luo Guang immediately opened his eyes, stood up and looked around, holding a homemade short spear in his hand. Ku Hank, who was on duty, also stood up, looked at Luo Guang, holding a homemade weapon in his hand, and looked at the location where the warning sound came from with a serious face. Don't pretend to sleep when you wake up, Luo Guang said to Ada's position. Ada opened her eyes, snorted, and stood up. When she was resting just now, she had been holding the tribal machete in her hand. Although the two did not speak openly, they knew that the other party was not an ordinary person, and they were also on guard against each other in the current situation. Are those people? Hancock turned on the flashlight in his hand and saw a figure approaching, more than 10 meters away from the camp. They caught up with us, but the three people who had been to the village with Luo Guang immediately saw the problem with the figure. Those people were naturally parasitic zombies, who were driven by those parasites and came all the way to the temporary camp of Luo Guang and others. I can't sleep peacefully. Kahank, those are the parasitic zombies mentioned before. Be careful of the tentacle-like parasites coming out of them, Luo Guang reminded Kahank to prevent him from rushing to ask for help or approaching rashly. Kahank was not stupid. How could so many people act in the wilderness without lights in the dark? This chapter is not over yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading. Through the flashlight, he immediately saw what Luo Guang specifically explained. Beautiful girl, go wake up the others. Luo Guang, let's go and deal with those zombies, Kahang said hurriedly. However, Luo Guang did not do it. Instead, he said, looking at their appearance, it should be those parasites that control the corpses to act. I am worried that if we kill those zombies, the parasites in the zombies will run out and attack us. Use fire. Kahang was about to ask what to do, but Luo Guang answered first. The others were woken up by Ada and soon came over to ask about the situation, and Luo Guang repeated the precautions. After hearing Luo Guang's suggestion, Bet immediately understood why he had to use fire, and he quickly led people to raise a wall of fire between the camp and the parasitic zombies. Those parasitic zombies seemed to feel the heat, and they did not dare to approach Luo Guang's temporary camp rashly, but this was not a long-term solution. There were not many things that could continue to burn on this plane. At this time, some people saw the situation in front of them and always understood why Luo Guang had proposed to move the shelter to the plane before, just to prevent this situation. If you don't use your machete, let me use it, Luo Guang said to Ada, who was standing aside and had nothing to do with it. Ada would not give her self-defense weapon to Luo Guang, and ruthlessly gave her own advice, saying, "This fire can't last too long. The best way is to abandon the seriously injured and escape. These zombies don't move fast. We can burn these zombies directly to death, so that the parasites in the zombies will be eliminated at the same time." Bet wanted to save as many people as possible. As soon as you get close to the zombie, the parasites in the zombie's body will rush out to bite you and get into your body. It's best to let the parasites stay in the body and not crawl around on the ground. The parasites are all black and hard to spot at night. This won't work, and that won't work. Can we really only leave those seriously injured people here? Hancock is a kind-hearted person and is very distressed. After barely making a wall of fire to keep the parasitic zombies out, everyone could only hold various weapons in their hands and discuss nervously. The slightly injured were fine, but the seriously injured couldn't move, so everyone discussed only one question, that is, whether to abandon the seriously injured. In fact, there is another way, just find someone to lead these monsters away. Ada, who had nothing to do with it, suddenly spoke up and invited Luo Guang, "Why don't you and I lead these monsters away?" Meow, thank you for subscribing and rewarding, and votes meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 189. Chapter 185. Capture. Aida doesn't trust others, so she is naturally very wary of the mysterious Luo Guang. So Aida doesn't really want to lead the parasitic zombies away with Luo Guang, but to find an opportunity to kill Luo Guang and nip the threat in the bud. Luo Guang also sensed the dangerous aura coming from Aida, but he didn't say no to the other party's invitation. This suggestion can just solve the current dilemma of the camp. This is a good trick. Luo Guang is different from Aida. If there is a way to save people, he will still save them. Pretending not to notice Aida's ill intentions, his eyes lit up and said. But as mentioned before, Aida judged that Luo Guang's reaction was the opposite. Seeing that the other party was not worried at all, he was a little worried whether his proposal was right in his favor. He couldn't help but wonder if he should prepare more backup plans. But before Aida could say anything, the parasitic zombies moved and began to walk towards the firewall without hesitation. The parasitic zombies probably watched Luo Guang and his friends discussing how to deal with them, so they took the initiative and started to act. Because of the fuel problem, the flame range of this firewall was not large, and these parasites were also fierce, directly controlling the corpse to pounce on the firewall. Then when the corpse suppressed the flames, These parasites broke out of the body and rushed towards the people who were still discussing. Good guy, this parasite is still intelligent. Luo Guang thought so in his heart, and his hands were not slow. He danced with a homemade short spear and picked up the parasite flying in the air back to the fire. But the parasite was more resistant to burning than Luo Guang thought, and it was not burned when it escaped from the fire. The co-pilot had a shadow on the parasite and was the first to turn around and run away, faster than Ada, who looked calm. On the other side, Bede reacted quickly, avoided the attack of the parasites, and then quickly stepped on the parasite to death with his feet. However, this parasite was like a cockroach. Countless small insects ran out of the place where Bede was crushed. Help! The middle-aged man shouted, holding the middle of the parasite tightly in his hand, and the front part of the parasite had already sunk into the other party's stomach. Others also saw the crisis of the middle-aged man, but at this time, others were unable to split up and could only worry. Because there was more than one parasite in each body of the tribesmen, Luo Guang and others barely blocked the first wave, and the second wave came randomly. And these parasites, as Luo Guang had predicted before, did not move slowly after leaving the host. The movement method was similar to that of snakes, with black skin with mucous membranes, no eyes, and a mouth full of serrated teeth at the front. In addition to the serrated teeth in this mouth, Luo Guang saw from the corner of his eye that Ada cut the two parasites that attacked her into 4 pieces with a knife, and then ran away in the opposite direction of the parasites without looking back. On one side were the civilians who were fighting and retreating, and on the other side was his own mission target. Luo Guang seemed to be in a dilemma. In fact, Luo Guang had already made sufficient preparations during Ada's coma. Ada's clothes had long been stained with the tracking pheromone that Luo Guang had been using before. After Ada got away from the parasites, she turned back to confirm whether Luo Guang had followed her. She found that Luo Guang was saving people and did not chase her, so she relaxed a little. After all, it was a good choice to stay away from the unpredictable Luo Guang. Among these survivors, only Luo Guang was unpredictable, and Luo Guang did not chase her. From Ada's point of view, it seemed that the other party's target was not herself. Although it was not a spear, the short spear Luo Guang held had an edge, so every time he attacked, he could accurately cut off the front part of the parasite's mouth. After losing the sharp teeth that could break through human clothes and skin, the danger of the parasites decreased rapidly. After all, these parasites did not have strong recovery ability. Bede solved the danger approaching him and turned to look at the middle-aged man. At some point, the middle-aged man had loosened his hands that were tightly holding the parasite and lay on the ground, and the parasite in his hands had disappeared. Bede speculated that the parasite had succeeded and drilled into the middle-aged man's body, so he had to stop rescuing him. However, his speculation was soon overturned. The screams from the place where the wounded were behind him were from a lame and slightly injured person. After injecting the larvae into the middle-aged man's body, the parasite cleverly crossed the defense line of Luo Guang and others and successfully attacked the wounded there. In addition to the serrated teeth, the mouths of these adult parasites also have a straw-like thing, and the function of this thing is not to drink blood. This is the main method for the adult to inject the larvae in its body into the host. The middle-aged man had clearly stopped the parasite from entering his body, but he still lost his life in the end. This is why the larvae that enter the host's body will quickly start a feast, eat a full meal, and then quickly grow into adults. The seriously injured were basically in a deep coma, and they basically didn't feel anything when they were bitten, and couldn't shout. After cleaning up the parasitic adults in the bodies of the first wave of parasitic zombies, Luo Guang thought quickly and finally made up his mind. What should I do? There are still those zombies coming in the distance. Hancock's face was full of sweat, and his hands were shaking slightly. He survived safely because he stood next to Luo Guang before. In addition, Bede and another young man also came over and looked at Luo Guang. Run away, but we need to burn this place down. Luo Guang knew that Bede's two young men did not want to be the villains who proposed abandoning the wounded. But they are still alive. Hancock didn't react at first, but when he watched Luo Guang directly pick up a piece of clothing next to the nearest fire, put it on the fire and light it, then picked it up and walked towards the wounded, he finally understood that Luo Guang did not plan to save those wounded. Bede rushed to answer, "The parasites have already entered the crowd of injured people. Even if we don't set fire, those people will not survive, and these people will also become a breeding ground for parasites. If the rescue team comes here, they will not survive. Not knowing what's going on here could potentially allow the parasite to spread elsewhere." Luo Guang nodded. Although Bede had no experience in biohazards, he saw things very clearly and quickly understood why Luo Guang specifically said that this place needed to be burned down. Another young man looked at the parasitic zombies that were approaching, and felt nervous. He snatched the burning clothes from Luo Guang's hand and threw them into the crowd. When the other party snatched the clothes from Luo Guang's hand, Luo Guang reacted instantly and let go. It was more like the other party took it than snatched it away. The areas where the injured lay were covered with found clothes and fabrics, so they were easily ignited. But after all, there was no accelerant, so Hancock jumped in, took away the burning clothes and threw them aside, and then quickly stamped out the flames on the ground. "Crazy guy." The young man just said a word when he saw this, then took his things and ran away without looking back. Bede took the opportunity to chase the young man, while Luo Guang looked at the approaching parasitic zombies and said, "You can't save them. You don't have the deworming medicine in your body to deal with it, and you have no way to stop the approaching parasitic zombies. In the end, they will just be eaten up by those parasites." After saying that, Luo Guang did not wait for Hancock's answer. He had to hurry up and chase Ada, lest something unexpected happen and the pheromones used to track Ada were lost. Looking at Luo Guang, who also left, Hancock held the weapon in his hand tightly. He couldn't even utter the last words to persuade others to help him. Following the tracking pheromones left on Ada, Luo Guang was able to chase Ada King at full speed without anyone around him. In fact, he didn't have to capture Ada. Anyway, the previous group of people also failed the mission and lost their lives in that research institute. His mission at this time was just to follow Ada, confirm the other party's location and report it to the superiors. Ada had only been away for less than 10 minutes. It was getting late, and the place was unfamiliar, so Ada could only escape about 3 kilometers away. At Luo Guang's current speed, he could catch up in minutes. Luo Guang did not turn on the flashlight at this time, and was galloping through the wilderness like a hunter in the night. Soon, Luo Guang saw the light of a flashlight not far away. Lowering his body, Luo Guang approached quickly, but Ada was not a vegetarian. Hearing a different sound of wind coming from behind, he immediately stopped, turned around and used the tribal knife in his hand to sweep away thousands of troops. Sparks flew out, and Luo Guang blocked the blow with the invisible Langkar saber in his hand. "It's you." Ada shouted, and then she was hit in the abdomen by Luo Guang. Taking advantage of Ada's stiffness, Luo Guang held the wrist with one hand, grabbed the opponent's weapon hand, walked around behind the opponent, and then kicked Ada's legs in the popliteal area. Ada didn't have any chance to reverse the situation, so she was pressed to the ground by Luo Guang, and a blade was placed behind her neck. "The knife is held, don't move it." Luo Guang said this specifically in case Ada didn't see the knife behind her neck. "What do you want?" Seeing that Luo Guang did not kill her directly, but was a little worried about hurting herself when she resisted, Ada quickly regained her composure and changed her strategy. Ada's strategy is not complicated either. She obtains intelligence through talking skills, and then seeks for loopholes to get out of danger. "Let me ask you an answer," Luo Guang said without any nonsense. "It seems that the other party is not for sex." Ada has temporarily come to this conclusion from what she just said. "Who are you?" Aiden naturally would not agree with Luo Guang. Luo Guang repeated what he just said, and then continued, or you can try to challenge my patience. A good girl doesn't suffer the immediate consequences, and in the end, Ada finally gave in. Tell me about the Atlantic Institute. What exactly? You took the job, Luo Guang said vaguely. Don't even think about lying. I have plenty of ways to confirm, Luo Guang added. Are you the force that invaded the Atlantic Institute before? Tell me about the invasion. Luo Guang did not answer yes or no, but there was some gratitude in his tone, thanking the other party for telling the matter. Ada shut her mouth tightly and thought about what to do. Luo Guang did not rush and waited quietly, while also confirming the safety of the surrounding situation. Finally, it was Ada who answered. Ada's waist was being pushed by Luo Guang's knee, and it was already a little painful. I'm at the Institute of the Atlantic. Let's start with Paris. Luo Guang didn't know whether the affairs of the Paris Institute were related to the affairs of the Atlantic Institute. Anyway, he just tried to deceive the other party. Ada didn't know this, and her mission at the Paris Institute was indeed related to the Atlantic Institute, so she was more surprised that the other party knew a lot of things, which was beyond her expectation. This made her speak more cautiously, but she didn't dare to say anything nonsense. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Since you know all these things, is there any need to ask? The nature is different. Okay, you have the final say anyway. She had no loyalty to her employer, the Atlantic Institute, so she began to speak out. Morpheus D. Duval, he is a former employee of the Research and Development Department of Umbrella Corporation. He was kicked out of the research department because of the virus leak in the Arklay Mountains. He is a perfectionist. Luo Guang smiled, and the other party said more details than Luo Guang imagined. That androgynous guy used to be the leader of the Atlantic Research Institute and Waste Treatment Facility in Umbrella. After being fired by Umbrella, he immediately organized mercenaries to occupy the Atlantic Research Institute. At this time, the Raccoon City incident happened, and Umbrella shelved the plan to retake the institute. Later, he contacted and hired the organization I belonged to, and then my organization arranged for me to go to the Paris Institute to seize the latest T/G synthetic virus developed there. As the name suggests, this is a new type of virus developed by fusing the T virus and the G virus. How many samples of the T/G synthetic virus are there? Did your organization also obtain the virus? No, the only T/G synthetic virus sample has been given to Morpheus. Ada answered two questions in one sentence. Where is the research data? I don't have time to find it. A fearless researcher activated the self-destruct device. If I hadn't used a computer virus to delay the self-destruct time, I wouldn't have had time to escape. Aiden now saw that all the buildings built by Umbrella Corporation had self-destruct systems by default, so they made special preparations. However, due to the problem of computing power, they could only delay the self-destruct time at most. What is the situation of the Atlantic Research Institute invasion you mentioned? Luo Guang kept asking. Ada said unhappily, I don't know either. The combat power of the invaders is stronger than that of ordinary people. If it weren't for the defensive means that Murphys had prepared to fight against Umbrella Corporation to take back the Institute, the entire Atlantic Research Institute might have been overturned by those invaders. Because of this incident, Ada, who had just completed the transaction, was driven out of the Atlantic Research Institute by Murphys after the invasion, and her plan to stay in the Atlantic Research Institute to steal data was shattered before it even started. Afterwards, Luo Guang continued to ask a lot of questions, such as Ada's situation in Raccoon City, etc., and Ada saw that Luo Guang knew so much about her, and she had a bit of a broken jar idea, so she answered Luo Guang all at once. I've answered all the questions, can you take me as gone? After asking the last question, Ada asked impatiently. Alas, I had a social gathering tonight and drank, otherwise I wouldn't update so late. Oh, I almost had to ask for leave. Extreme. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 190. Chapter 186 Delivery of Goods and Return. Want to leave? Wishful thinking. Aida is elusive. Even Simmons, the leader of the X organization, has difficulty finding Aida, so Luo Guang will not let her go so easily. Because Aida has been a commercial spy for many years, she not only has information about the Atlantic Institute, but also has other valuable information for Luo Guang to dig out. Aida replied, "I have told you everything you want to know. I know about the Atlantic Institute, I also know about Raccoon City, what else? I don't believe that you are only involved in these things. Anyway, you have no loyalty to those guys, so there is no need to keep secrets from them." Aida did not tell the truth about Raccoon City. Although most of the situations are in line with the plot of the remake of Resident Evil 2, the most critical part is missing, that is, in the version Aida said, there is no Leon. At first, Luo Guang thought it was because of his butterfly effect that he gave the red heart key and notebook to Leon in advance, which made Leon faster when decrypting, and eventually caused the two to miss each other. However, Luo Guang sensed it a little and found that it was not the case. Aida hid Leon's affairs through the method of 9 truths and 1 lie, so every time Aida said that Leon's existence needed to be hidden, Luo Guang could sense the strange fluctuations in Aida's heart. "I have professional ethics, and although I don't know why, you won't torture me at all." Aida realized that Luo Guang would not torture her, and she couldn't help but feel annoyed that she could easily tell the Atlantic Institute and Raccoon City just now. This is probably the privilege of beautiful women. Luo Guang made up a reason, and then, as if he was angry, he used a relatively mild physical method to knock Aida unconscious, and finally tied her up with a rope from the backpack. However, this time Luo Guang did not use the tortoise shell binding method, but just tied Aida's hands and legs separately. Then Luo Guang carried Aida, who was confirmed to be in a coma, on his shoulders, changed to a safe place, took out his pad and began to search for things about Morpheus. It seems that because Ada has been to the Atlantic Research Institute, the X organization has collected a lot of information about the Atlantic Research Institute and its owner Murphy's. According to the latest information, Murphy seems to be planning to hold an auction on a ship snatched from Umbrella in order to raise research funds. According to the information, it can be confirmed that there are many people participating in the auction. Luo Guang even saw several representatives of pharmaceutical companies that are members of the Global Pharmaceutical Federation, including familiar names such as Will Pharma and Sanlian Pharmaceuticals. Murphy's, who held the auction, did not raise the banner of Umbrella, but chose to announce his identity as a researcher who defected from Umbrella. Of course, this statement of defection is incorrect. The reason why Murphy's did not tell the truth that he was fired by Umbrella was naturally to avoid those who received the invitation letter from thinking that he was a good-for-nothing and was kicked out of Umbrella. On the contrary, the name of defection can attract others. After all, since the decline of Umbrella Corporation, those researchers seeking a way out have been sought after by other companies that are interested in the biochemical industry. Unfortunately, the companies secretly controlled by Organization X did not receive the invitation letter. It is not known whether it was a coincidence, which left Luo Guang with no shortcuts and he had to find a way to sneak into the auction. Luo Guang was still interested in the T/G synthetic virus, but he did not know whether the synthesis would allow the characteristics of the G virus to be effectively exerted. After thinking again and again, the auction would not start until a month later, so Luo Guang decided that if he could not find a way from Organization X, he would sneak in as Wusong and participate in it. As for the method, he would track those who received the invitation letter in advance. At the same time, Luo Guang also planned to take this opportunity to let the GIMZ troops, who had been trained and run in, conduct an actual combat to see how the team's combat effectiveness was now, and to check for omissions in time. After confirming these things, Luo Guang did not report that Aida had surrendered, but used various methods to wake her up and then untied her. Ada stared at Luo Guang with a furious look on her face. This was the first time she had been so embarrassed since she started working in this line of work, and she was being played around by others. "Are you going to let me go?" Luo Guang shook his head, and was tapping his phone with one hand to communicate with his contact person to confirm the arrival of rescue, and then said, "If you dare to leave, I will knock you out again." Thinking of something, Luo Guang put away his phone and picked up Ada's shoulder bag that was thrown on the ground. "Hey, it's too despicable for you to rummage through a lady's bag like this." Ada could only speak out for a while. She was still having a headache at this time, but she didn't dare to stop Luo Guang's actions. "I'm not a gentleman at most, but it's not a despicable thing." Luo Guang opened his shoulder bag and saw the flare gun lying quietly in it. Luo Guang took out the flare gun and said, "And you lied, it seems that you are not much better than me. If we had this flare, we would have one more trump card to deal with the parasites just now." "I'm not lying. I took the flare gun. Didn't I see it on the captain? And this trump card can't stop those parasites. Don't blame everything on me. I lost it in your bag, right?" Luo Guang replied with a sneer, which was very consistent with the style of a behind-the-scenes organization like Organization X. "Okay, there's no need to quarrel with me, everyone is his own master. And if it weren't for me, the rescue team wouldn't know where we are now." Luo Guang stopped talking fast, there was nothing to hide, and said, "What is your purpose?" Ada has not figured out what Luo Guang's purpose is until now. As for the satellite phone, she guessed it from the moment Luo Guang took out the phone. "Oh. Don't ask. You will know when the rescue comes. Take a good rest now, the night is still long," Luo Guang said, and began to prepare for making a fire. As for food, Luo Guang always has it in his backpack. Stuff. As for water, although Luo Guang emptied the water bottle before boarding the plane, he replenished it on the plane afterwards. At noon the next day, the rescue team finally appeared in Luo Guang's field of vision, so Luo Guang immediately fired a signal flare to tell the other party his location. The rescue came later than Luo Guang imagined, and the reason was simple. Luo Guang saw Simmons, the leader of Organization X, stepping off the helicopter. Simmons immediately smiled when he saw Ada looking bored and tired next to Luo Guang. "You are actually that guy's hunting dog," Ada whispered beside Luo Guang. Ada didn't take the opportunity to escape last night. She didn't want to suffer any more physical pain. Thinking of this, Ada felt that her head started to hurt again. "You use money to do things, don't blame me," Luo Guang replied casually. "Ada. I worked so hard to find you." Simmons was very happy, and the bodyguards following him spread out after Simmons stood in front of Ada, surrounding Luo Guang and the others for protection. For Luo Guang, Simmons, who looked like a leader, suddenly turned into a love brain, causing his previous strongman to instantly collapse. Luo Guang felt indescribably awkward about this. Ada didn't look good, but she didn't do anything drastic, such as holding Simmons hostage. However, Luo Guang knew that Ada did not accept her fate. Instead, she kept thinking about how to escape Simmons' claws on the back of her hand. After the initial excitement, Simmons looked at Luo Guang and said, "You did a good job this time. What kind of reward do you need? Money? Power? Or a woman?" This sentence has the feeling of a domineering president, but as the current leader of Organization X, he is indeed qualified to say this. However, Luo Guang was not as open-minded as the lion. After all, he still had to work under the other party, so he said, "I just hope that you, boss, can forgive me for something." "Oh? What's the matter?" Simmons was in a good mood, waiting patiently for Luo Guang's next words. What Luo Guang was going to say was that he had to use force to catch Ada. After hearing what Luo Guang said, Simmons laughed and said, "These are small things, as long as you complete the task, and Ada as long as she's fine." The scope of nothing is too vague, but Luo Guang only needs such a word from him. What he is most worried about is that Ada will slander Simmons and frame him while Simmons is in love. Contrary to Simmons's sensible expression, Ada, who was carrying Simmons behind her back, watched Luo Guang leave with angry eyes. At the same time, she was already thinking about how to cause trouble for Luo Guang. Although Luo Guang blocked the road ahead of time, she already had some ideas. Now that his mission was completed, Luo Guang could follow the plane back from the big boss Simmons. However, Luo Guang got off the plane midway and parted ways with Simmons so as not to disturb Simmons' interest. At the same time, if Ada found a chance to escape, there was no need for him to stop it. Luo Guang got off the plane at an airport near the capital of Congo, and without any psychological shadow, he bought a ticket directly at the airport and flew back to the GIMZ training base in Cape Town, South Africa. Back in the office, Luo Guang called Hank and asked, "Hank, do you know about Umbrella Atlantic Research Institute?" Hank recalled it for a while, and then reported, "I know, I once transported biological and chemical weapons to that place. But I remember that the director of that research institute seemed to be fired later, and then the research institute was abandoned." Hearing Hank's words, Luo Guang probably understood that Hank went to that place a long time ago. While Luo Guang was thinking about other things, he told what he knew about Morpheus. "I don't know if that person is a perfectionist, but every time I escort important items, he will get angry if the time is a few seconds too late." Hank didn't like that guy and said something. "Boss, is our next task?" Luo Guang nodded and replied, "Yes, I got some information. In a month, that guy Morpheus will conduct an auction of biochemical viruses or biochemical weapons on a cruise ship called Spencer Rain. I remember that the ship seemed to be a luxury cruise ship used by Umbrella senior officials for vacation. I once served as a security guard on it." When Hank heard Luo Guang say this, he guessed that the task was to lead his people to destroy the auction. "Yes, I was thinking about the tools needed for cruise ship operations and the methods of attack." But it was so easy to guess that Luo Guang would not be Hank's boss. Seeing Hank's sudden realization, Luo Guang said with a smile, "Hank, you misunderstood. Your mission is not to destroy the auction. I need you to launch an attack on the Atlantic Institute when I confirm that Morpheus appears on the cruise ship. Attack and destroy all biochemical data and viruses above. This is the famous home stealing tactic. Well, Morpheus is just an ordinary researcher. Is it necessary to confirm that he has left the Atlantic Institute?" Hank didn't understand. Luo Guang told Hank what Ada had said about how the previous invasion force was solved by the defense measures set up by Morpheus. Then Luo Guang continued, "This guy can't trust those mercenaries. He will probably take those mercenaries to the cruise ship as well. In this case, the risks you encounter will be minimized and casualties can be reduced." Hank nodded. He liked this plan to reduce the possibility of casualties for his men. "Anyway, there is still some time before the auction. You should start preparing now according to the specifications for attacking Umbrella Corporation's Research Institute. However, it is best to keep the specific task content secret from others." Luo Guang is worried that he is still in the team. He was a spy for another organization he didn't know about, and he knew Hank would understand what he meant by this. "I understand. I think a ghost place like the Research Institute still needs some heavy firepower, which may cost a lot of money." Although Hank felt that his boss might not mind, he still had to say something to the other party first. Luo Guang nodded and said, "One more thing, although Murphy is a researcher, let me remind you. Dr. William you met in Raccoon City was also a weak researcher, so if you find Murphy, if so, contact me immediately and don't rush in on your own." Hank nodded. Dr. William, an unarmed guy, became the culprit who destroyed his team after being injected with the virus, so he understood what Luo Guang meant. "By the way, boss, if you want to participate in the auction, do you need us to select a few soldiers with experience in protecting VIPs to be your bodyguards?" After Hank finished speaking, he quickly added, "I know you're good at hitting, boss, but you can't beat 4 punches with both hands, and bullets don't have holes." Luo Guang shook his head confidently and said, "No, I have other plans." Seeing this, Hank did not insist anymore and said, "I understand, boss, if you unfortunately die." Luo Guang cursed with a smile, and then said, "Okay, I'm sure, so don't worry about it." Copy that. Hank gave a military salute and left the office. Meow. Back pain. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 192. Chapter 187. Invitation. After confirming that there were no new missions from the Red Claws, Luo Guang planned to stay at the GIMZ training base for a few days to collect information about the Murphy's auction. Of course, as the boss of GIMZ, Luo Guang also needed to do some of the army's affairs, but Luo Guang was the boss and was more in charge of the direction of the entire GIMZ. One afternoon, Luo Guang woke up from a nap and made a cup of coffee. He took the coffee and sat back in his office chair, tasting the Yurgakef coffee produced in Ethiopia. The rich texture and unique soft floral fragrance washed over Luo Guang's taste buds at the same time. There was no bitterness, which just matched Luo Guang's current mood. After drinking the coffee, Luo Guang slowly called Susan, the intermediary, to communicate and consolidate the relationship between the two sides. That's what he said, but the feelings were all false. Luo Guang mainly wanted to communicate information with Susan and consolidate the relationship between the two sides. Because of Hank, Susan gave the GIMZ a chance to cooperate, but whether the cooperation can be long-term depends on Luo Guang himself to let the GIMZ reflect its potential benefits. Is it the Umbrella Company's shower cruise ship? Boss Wu, why are you suddenly interested in cruise ships? If you want to carry out landing operations, cruise ships are not suitable, and we can provide enough speedboats for you GIMZ to use anytime and anywhere for such things. There is no need to buy ships, right? Susan didn't have a cruise ship, only large ships such as large cargo ships. When she heard Luo Guang asking about the cruise ship, her first reaction was that Luo Guang needed this ship for landing operations. She didn't persuade Luo Guang to promote her business. She really felt that it was not suitable for the GIMZ troops. "Susan, you misunderstood." Luo Guang asked about the shower before to test whether Susan had received the invitation letter. Luo Guang told Susan that he wanted to buy a cruise ship, and Hank recommended a ship from Umbrella, saying that Umbrella was in urgent need of money and should be able to buy it at a low price. Luo Guang continued, "Actually, I just plan to use it as a mobile base at sea. After all, it is too troublesome to separate people and guns and go to the target location every time. Buying a gun on the spot is not as familiar as using it yourself. A familiar gun is a matter of life and death for a mercenary. Wouldn't it be better to buy a plane? It's faster. But it's much more expensive, and there are also issues such as flight routes. Generally, emergency missions are invited by other countries, and we will get the green light if we bring weapons over, but if it is some biochemical crisis incidents that we discovered ourselves, it's different. On the contrary, the inspection of cruise ships is faster." "I understand. I thought you were just against biochemicals to make money." "Okay, I'll keep an eye on it for you." Susan accepted Luo Guang's statement on the surface. "Oh, by the way, cargo ships are also okay. The most important thing is safety and stability," Luo Guang added. This made Susan smile. Although the other party's first target was the cruise ship, she would not deliberately say that she could not find it and then sell her cargo ship to Luo Guang, but there was always hope. The two sides chatted politely for a few more words and then hung up the phone. Susan put away her smile, pressed the bell, and called the secretary who was working outside the door. "Boss." The secretary knocked on the door politely and walked in. "The large cruise ship shower of Umbrella Company, go check what the situation is with this ship." Susan felt that the other party's purpose was not just to buy a mobile base at sea, so she planned to start the investigation from this clue. Of course, this was just to satisfy her curiosity as a businessman, and intelligence was also a commodity that could make a lot of money. After hanging up the phone, Luo Guan called Jill again. Jill's work had been completed yesterday and he withdrew from the Republic of Bajirabo, and successfully received a 5-star rating from Terra Sever. After all, they were the protagonists of the Resident Evil, so Luo Guan was not surprised to hear that Jill had an unexpected situation during this mission. General Grande of the Republic of Bajirabo, the buyer of the biochemical virus, said that he wanted Tang Ning to show off his selling skills, but in fact, he secretly sent people to steal the biochemical virus that Tang Ning asked the mercenaries to transport. In order to temporarily conceal this matter, General Grande still spread the biochemical virus in the town of Boko according to Tang Ning's plan, turning it into a biochemical test site. Then Grande cried thief, saying that other warlords disregarded their lives and spread the biochemical virus in their territory, so he invited the people of Terra Sever to come and rescue them. As for why he didn't find the GIMZ force, it was because it was a mercenary organization after all, and Grande was worried that the GIMZ force would take on tasks from other warlords and cause trouble for himself. It happened that at that time, Jill and others were discussing the problem with the people of Terra Sever under the mediation of O'Brien. O'Brien had already told the people of Terra Sever about General Grande's situation, so Terra Sever understood what a bad idea General Grande had. Although they knew what General Grande was planning, after seeing the tragic conditions in the crisis-affected areas that General Grande sent them, Jill and his team decided to set out immediately for the rescue. With professional military talents like Jill, Terra Sever did not wait until the biochemical crisis began to subside before starting the reconstruction and rescue operation. Some medical personnel and a small number of security personnel followed Jill and others into the town of Boko. On the other hand, General Grande proved one thing to people, that is, virus research is not something that everyone can do. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. General Grande thought that as long as there were advanced equipment, a few virology experts and a large enough site, he could conduct research on biochemical viruses himself. But in the eyes of Tang Ning, a former Umbrella researcher who knew about this, the laboratory established by General Grande was just a small workshop, and it was just a pipe dream to want to study powerful biochemical viruses and weapons there. Not to mention the accumulation of technology, in Tang Ning's opinion, there was no sufficiently standardized research management system, and General Grande's laboratory would sooner or later have a virus leak. As Tang Ning predicted, a virus leak occurred in the laboratory in General Grande's base camp. In a very short time, this poor country staged a biochemical crisis again. For General Grande, the dispensable town of Boko is far less important than his base camp, so he immediately called Jill and others for help and ordered them to come and rescue him. However, Jill and others did not take any action in response to the call for help from General Grande, who had made things difficult for them. It was not that Jill and others were maliciously retaliating and deliberately leaving the other party aside. For Jill and others, the title of general is meaningless, and the various benefits promised by Grande cannot attract Jill and others. In the face of biochemical crisis, everyone is equal. Jill and others found survivors in Boko town, who were several half-grown children. Because of the shortage of manpower, they needed to wait for the follow-up support of Terra Sever to take over the survivors after rescuing them. If the development of the situation was not unexpected to Jill and others, then what they saw in Grande's base camp after transferring the survivors to Terra Sever for follow-up support was unexpected enough. When they went to the base camp where General Grande was with Terra Sever, it was already 2 days later. They found that the biochemical crisis there had been resolved. Based on the battle traces left on the ground and the appearance of the deceased, Jill and his team easily determined that the guys who did those good deeds without leaving their names were other warlords of the Republic of Bajirabo. Tang Ning was not a generous guy. He would not let the other party go easily after being tricked by General Grande, so he immediately told the other warlords of this country about the biochemical crisis in General Grande's base camp. After those warlords who had been suppressed by Grande knew that Grande's base camp was in a biochemical crisis, they quickly reached an agreement and sent troops to attack Grande's territory at the same time. Their goal was not to occupy the territory in the chaos, but to delay the defensive forces outside Grande's territory to prevent them from returning to support Grande's base camp. At the same time, they also sent a fast guerrilla force to Grande's base camp. These warlords had not thought of this at first, and only wanted to snatch food from Grande, and it would be enough to take a piece of territory from him, but Tang Ning did not think so. As a person who provided intelligence, he also provided those warlords with a plan to solve the problem of General Grande once and for all. For other warlords, this opportunity was far more important than grabbing a piece of territory, because Grande was already the only one in the warlord chaos, and even if they grabbed a piece of territory, with Grande's ability, they might not be able to defend it, so they agreed to Tang Ning's plan. Unlike the Raccoon City, there were only ordinary zombies in Grande's base camp, so those warlords solved the biochemical crisis without any danger with the support of the zombie intelligence provided by Tang Ning. And the fate of General Grande was not to die in the mouth of zombies, nor to die under the guns of other warlords. He did not fear when facing the enemies surrounding his general's mansion, but successfully used the counter-espionage plan to make those people kill each other. But this time, General Grande miscalculated. Even though they were killing each other, those people still did not forget General Grande. I don't know who shouted that General Grande's head was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, which instantly dragged the great hero General Grande into the chaos, and he was immediately shot dead by the mercenaries bribed by Tang Ning. When Jill and others arrived there, the victors had already looted Grande's vault and arsenal, and left here without stopping, returning to assist their teammates who were still holding back Grande's army to encircle the enemy. These warlords will continue to fight each other, but at this moment their first priority is to divide up the huge cake left after General Grande's death. Since the biochemical crisis was resolved, Jill and his team did not stay for too long. After rescuing the survivors, they immediately fled the place of trouble and left the country before the warlords noticed Jill and others. Luo Guang listened to Jill telling him about her experience on his mobile phone, and the corners of his mouth rose unconsciously. He really hoped that one day he could act with Jill, instead of being separated from each other like this. By the way, Luo Guang, I found an invitation letter at Grande's base camp. It's an auction for biochemical viruses. Isn't it such a coincidence? Luo Guang immediately thought of Morpheus, sat up straight, and asked, then the inviter of the auction will not be a person named Morpheus, right? Luo Guang, you know this information? Did the Red Claw's intelligence department find out? I really envy your intelligence power. I just found out recently, but it was not found by the Red Claws. I learned about it through other channels. Jill knew that Luo Guang had his own informants, all of which were accumulated when he was in Umbrella Corporation, so he did not ask about the source of the information in detail. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Then will your Red Claws go out? Do you want us to cooperate? After this battle in the country, Jill's self-confidence soared, and his mood was not completely calmed down. He was still thinking about continuing the anti-biochemical activities. Luo Guang smiled and did not answer Jill's question. Instead, he asked, does the invitation say where to gather? Is the final auction location on the high seas? Jill, who was resting in the hotel, took out the invitation letter, looked around and said, it is held in the waters around an island. I don't know if it is on the high seas. Then, Jill asked, Guang, have you reported this to the Red Claws? I don't even have an invitation letter. I only know that there is such an auction. How can I report it without accurate information? But I have already notified the GIMZ troops about this matter. Why? Isn't the Red Claws better? Jill asked in confusion. I have a cooperative relationship with the GIMZ army, and you know this, so this time I will tell them the information and give them a chance to make money. Based on Jill's impression of Luo Guang would never give this information to others easily, so he asked suspiciously, make money? Does GIMZ give you any reward? No reward. I will tell you about the army later, and I guarantee you will be surprised. Luo Guang plans to find an opportunity to talk to Jill about GIMZ and tell Jill that he is the real boss. As for Wu Song's matter, Luo Guang plans to keep it secret for the time being. Did they get the invitation letter? If not, how about I give you this invitation letter in my hand? Since Luo Guang said so, Jill didn't bother about it anymore and asked. No, just give me the address. It's just what I want to be, not on the high seas, so it's convenient for me to sneak in. Since it's not on the high seas, it's easier for Luo Guang to sneak onto the ship. Jill realized that there was something wrong with what Luo Guang had just said, and said, Me? You're going too? Isn't the GIMZ unit responsible? I'm also an outsider, Luo Guang said to keep the mystery. Since Luo Guang was going alone, Jill had to ask, are you going alone? Yes, it's hard to sneak in with too many people. But it's too dangerous, Jill said again. Luo Guang was a little confused. Before Jill knew that he was going on a mission, she didn't seem to keep asking him questions and worry about his safety. Oh, I see. Jill, you want to go with me? But Luo Guang quickly realized this, so Jill asked so many questions, implying that she wanted to go on a mission with him. Jill smiled on the other end of the phone when she heard what Luo Guang said, and said, then do you want me to accompany you? Of course. Where are you now? I'll find you. After hearing Jill's answer, Luo Guang hung up the phone and couldn't wait to pack his luggage and get ready to go. Today, in yesterday's efforts. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 193. Chapter 188 Bioterrorism Defense Team. Yo, Chris. Jill and the others were resting in Egypt. Luo Guang came to the hotel where they were staying. The first thing he saw was Chris, who was exercising. After a while, Chris's muscle mass increased again, and he became more and more like the image in the Resident Evil 5 game. Luo Guang, why are you here? Because of Jill. Chris didn't ask Luo Guang how he knew they lived here. Didn't Jill say anything? Luo Guang was surprised when he heard Chris question. Didn't Jill tell Chris and the others that she was going to act with him? Why did you come here together? Jill opened the door, looked at the two tough men outside, and said strangely. Ah. Jill responded with a hug from Luo Guang. Luo Guang hugged Jill directly, rubbed her cheek and said, long time no see, Jill. I miss you so much. Chris is watching. Luo Guang had never been so excited to meet him before, so Jill didn't react for a while and looked at Chris at the door, feeling a little shy. Luo Guang said with a bad smile, I did this just because Chris was watching, to make him envious. Looking at Chris, who sighed unconsciously, Jill also smiled evilly, and understood why Luo Guang hugged him so excitedly this time. Jill decided to add fuel to the fire and said, soon this trick won't work on Chris. Does Luo Guangqian know? There is a female doctor in Teresef who seems to have a crush on Chris. She used to pester Chris every day. Reese. When Chris saw that the fire was coming, he quickly denied it. I just saved her before, so she came to thank me. The hero saves the beauty. Isn't this plot one of the royal routes to start a relationship? Luo Guang said with a smile. Chris's face turned red and he said, "I won't tell you anymore, I'm going to continue exercising." After saying that, Chris left as if running away. "Okay, Chris, leave, you can let me go." After Luo Guang rubbed it for a while, he let go of Gil, followed Gil into the room, and said, "You didn't tell Chris about your mission with me." "Not yet. Anyway, I'm not anxious about this matter. And now that I've told him, he will definitely want to follow me. I was on the phone before, so I didn't ask too much in detail." "Does the invitation say how many people can be brought?" Luo Guang asked. After hanging up the phone, Jill carefully checked the contents of the invitation letter, so he could answer immediately and said, "One invitee or representative can only bring one attendant and can carry a pistol." This requirement is basically the same as the umbrella auction in the Amazon rainforest. Luo Guang thought for a while and asked, "General Grand's name should be written on the invitation letter. Are you sure that that guy is dead?" Gil handed the invitation letter to Luo Guang, then nodded and replied, "That guy's head was cut off and taken away. It's strange that he's still alive. In other words, I don't know if the person who died was General Grande," Luo Guang thought in his mind. But this matter had little to do with Luo Guang and the others, so Luo Guang did not express his doubts. "The terrorist's name is written on it. In this case, it would be better for us to go as representatives. After all, Grande is a terrorist recognized by various countries, and his appearance is recorded." Gil thought of a question and said, "But the news of Grande's death should have been passed on. Will the invitation be invalidated?" "This is not something we should worry about. Anyway, we know where the auction will be held, and there are plenty of ways to enter the auction." Luo Guang said this, but in his heart he had already prepared the story about General Grande's fake death. That's right, Gil was not a stickler for rules. He immediately understood what Luo Guang meant. The worst he could do was become an uninvited guest at the auction. "By the way, regarding GIMZ, do you want to surprise or scare me?" After finishing talking about the business, Gil leaned against the wall, crossed his hands on his chest, and asked, "Oh, Jill, don't be angry. There is a reason why I didn't tell you before." Seeing Jill's attitude, Luo Guang understood that she was a little angry because of some things he had hidden from Jill about GIMZ. "Then tell me." "GIMZ force is the force I built." Hearing Luo Guang's words, Gil was very surprised, but then he looked confused and asked, "But I remember that the boss of the GIMZ unit is named Wu. What is his relationship with you?" "I am the boss behind the scenes. After all, I am now a member of the Red Claws, and the source of funds for establishing the GIMZ force is hard to explain. In order to avoid suspicion, Wu Song is the one who puts it on the record." Luo Guang did not answer Jill's question directly. After so many days, Jill has gotten to know Luo Guang very well. When Luo Guang does not answer questions directly, it means that Luo Guang may have hidden some key information. If you don't ask further, if you ask Luo Guang again later, he will definitely shirk responsibility by saying that you didn't ask or something like that. So here, Jill has no intention of letting Luo Guang go, and asks, "Then what is your relationship?" She would not speak out her speculation, otherwise Luo Guang would follow her words and make her mistakenly believe that her speculation was correct. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. I'll tell you, don't be afraid. Seeing this, Luo Guang did not insist anymore. He just habitually left room for maneuver and hid some information. It had nothing to do with Luo Guang's previous identity as an intelligence agent. Luo Guang's job before crossing was also the type that required him to speak less to avoid saying the wrong thing and not leave any handle when speaking. Jill nodded, and then she saw Luo Guang suddenly turn his back to her and do something unknown. Then when Luo Guang turned his head, she found that Luo Guang had changed his face at this time. "This is... I am Wu Song." Luo Guang's voice also changed at this time, but the next sentence changed back and said, Wusong is a fake identity I made with the disguise technique, a magical oriental technology. Then, Luo Guang turned his face again, and before Jill jumped towards Luo Guang and tried to expose Luo Guang's disguise technique, Luo Guang had quickly changed back. The matter of disguise should not be investigated in depth, so after Luo Guang and Jill played around for a while, he drew Jill's attention back to the matter of the GIMZ unit and said, anyway, this is the case. The GIMZ unit is my unit. No wonder there are many former Umbrella Company people in the GIMZ unit. It turns out that their boss is a former Umbrella Company. As Jill said this, he pulled Luo Guang's face with both hands, as if to confirm whether the person in front of him was really Luo Guang himself. Yes, I am, Luo Guang said, and his hands began to counterattack Jill. You don't count, I have to confirm it carefully. Jill felt the restlessness of Luo Guang's hands, and knew what to do next. I heard from Chris that you came early in the morning. It seems that young people have good energy. Barry saw that Luo Guang and the others had just come to the private room of the restaurant and teased. At this time, the people in the private room of the restaurant included Barry and Chris, as well as 2 local Egyptians from Terra Sephir. Hello, Luo Guang from the Red Claws. Luo Guang took the initiative to introduce himself to someone he didn't know. I'm Aha from Terra Sephir. My name is too long, just call me Aha. For the same reason, just call me Zuosai. I'm also a member of Terra Sephir. The 2 introduced themselves one after another. Aha really didn't expect that people from the Red Claws would appear here, and they were also in contact with Chris and the others. Thinking of this, Aha decided to report this matter to the higher UPS, so that the people above would re-evaluate the value of Chris and the others. I want to ask, Luo Guang, what is your relationship with Chris and the others? Are they from your Red Claws? The non-staff members of the Red Claws, the undercover personnel who went to other organizations, the other party's words were not finished, and it seemed to contain various possibilities. Luo Guang sat next to Jill and replied, it has nothing to do with the Red Claws. Jill and I met in Raccoon City. Oh, that's it? Zosai understood when he heard what Luo Guang said. Because Jill was a survivor of the Raccoon City incident, it was normal for the 2 sides to know each other. They just took different anti-biochemical paths. But since you are in Egypt, does the Red Claws intend to interfere in the affairs of non-NATO member countries? Aha felt it necessary to find out why the other party came here. Luo Guang heard the other party's words and showed a puzzled look on his face. He asked back, did a biochemical crisis happen in Egypt? No. Aha heard Luo Guang's question and realized that he had just overreacted. But there was nothing he could do about it. The Red Claws were funded by NATO countries, but the largest shareholder was the Lighthouse country. He was worried that this was a preparation and test made by the Lighthouse country to interfere in the affairs of its own country. That's it? I'm just here for vacation. Luo Guang shrugged and didn't tell the relationship between him and Jill. Okay, let's order some food. I'm starving. Barry found the right time to change the subject so as not to embarrass Aha. The atmosphere at the table was quite lively, but except for Barry, who drank a few glasses of beer, no one else drank. After everyone had eaten and drunk enough, they chatted for a while and then went back to their homes and mothers. After watching the people from Terra Sephir leave in a taxi, Luo Guang and Jill returned to the hotel and went to Chris's room for a small meeting. Jill, why did you call us here? Barry said, and Chris's question of why he went to his room for a meeting was ignored by everyone. Mainly to tell you something. Oh, Barry looked back and forth between Luo Guang and Jill, and said with sudden realization, oh, congratulations, when was it confirmed? Luo Guang reacted instantly and said quickly, Barry, you misunderstood. Yes, let's talk about serious things. Jill continued Luo Guang's words unhappily. Haha, just kidding. Barry laughed. Chris held his forehead and said, let's stop joking here. Jill wouldn't call us for a meeting for no reason, and this matter should be related to you, Luo Guang, right? Luo Guang nodded and told them what he and Jill were going to do. When he started talking about the topic, Barry also stopped joking and said seriously, "You want to enter the auction venue, how do you need our help? And for such a big thing, why don't you ask Terra Cipher for help?" "How can Terracef help? They have no fighting ability," Gil asked. Barry replied, "I know, but they can use their efforts from other places. For example, after we obtain the buyer's list, let them use public opinion or other means to force the buyer to destroy the purchased virus themselves, etc." This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Barry, Terracef is just a non-governmental organization. Do they have the power to supervise others? If the buyer gave up the biochemical virus so easily, the buyer would not attend the auction in the first place, and would even auction it will report it. Luo Guang answered Barry's question in one sentence. When Gil said he had no fighting ability, he didn't mean in terms of force. Barry had more thoughts on his mind, so after visiting the Terracef base, he felt that the Terracef family was so prosperous that Barry temporarily forgot about the nature of the Terracef family. Barry lowered his head and thought, and said, "But I think they will become an official organization sooner or later. After all, there are many high-ranking officials within Terracef. I have talked with them, and they all feel that Terracef it is possible to go further. If we cooperate with them and then join them by showing our value, we can quickly gain the support of national power. Breaking away from the identity of a civil society organization will also be beneficial to us in carrying out anti-biochemical actions around the world." In response to Barry's words, Luo Guang shook his head and retorted, "I don't think Terracef will become an official organization. I think O'Brien thinks so too, so he is committed to making it an official organization. Terracef serves as a springboard for the anti-biological forces you form, rather than directly joining them." Before Barry could refute him, Luo Guang explained the reason. "Barry, you should also know how big Terracef is now and how many people are involved in it. They have the strength to contribute and the money to contribute. It looks very beautiful and united, right?" Barry nodded. Those officials had explained to him how big and powerful Terracef was now due to their efforts. But the most organized action in Terracef has been the demonstrations. Since the Raccoon City incident, Terracef has been protesting and demonstrating in various places around the world. Do you think any country would be willing to back this kind of organization? If Terracef does become an official organization in a country, how do you think other countries will view Terracef? There was a taboo word with color that Luo Guang didn't say, and his idea of persuading Barry was that Terracef was now too big, which made other countries afraid to take it into their own hands. For Terracef, maintaining the nature of a non-governmental organization is the best choice. But we can't always be civilian mercenaries, right? This is not a long-term solution to anti-biochemical warfare. Barry was worried about this, and for the sake of the future, he contacted the officials of Terracef. I don't know what O'Brien's plans are after that, but I have a suggestion. You'd better confirm the name of your organization as soon as possible, and then use Terracef as a stepping stone to get you into the side of the United Nations. Luo Guang's words gave Barry a feeling of enlightenment. Chris was the same and said in shock, "Yes, if we want to carry out anti-biochemical actions around the world, we should join the United Nations instead of looking for a certain country to be a backer and then become that country's anti-biochemical employee soldier." Barry nodded and finally put down the questions he had been thinking about recently, and said, "Speaking of which, O'Brien seems to have similar thoughts, and he has been urging us to come up with a name quickly, otherwise he will not be able to tell others promote and recommend yourself." "Yes, but we have been thinking about it for a long time and haven't found one that everyone has passed. Luo Guang, do you have any suggestions?" Gil told Luo Guang that none of the three of them were very good at naming. "Yes, New Special Tactics and Rescue Squad, abbreviated as NSTARS, commonly known as STARS, you are all members of STARS anyway, why don't you go back to this name? This name is familiar to all three guilds, but it seems a bit ordinary. The name Special Tactics and Rescue Team is not a new thing created by the Raccoon City Police Department. There is also a team with the same name in New York. After hearing the feedback from the three people, Luo Guang thought for a while, and after referring to the name of BSAA, he said, then Bioterrorism Security Squad, Bioterrorism Defense Team, referred to as BSS, briefly and clearly explain your work tasks, which is also convenient. Promote it. This name seems to be good, as the predecessor of BSAA Luo Guang had some selfish intentions when he proposed the name BSS. The three of them thought the name was pretty good, simple, and clear, so they all nodded and approved it unanimously. Then Barry took out his cell phone and reported the name to O'Brien to see what the other party's opinion was. Egypt is earlier than the Lighthouse Country, so O'Brien did not rest and quickly replied to Barry, saying that he thought the name was not bad, at least better than the name made up of the initials of Jill and the other three. In this way, in a small meeting that deviated from the original discussion, the name of Jill's current team was unexpectedly decided. Second update to pay back the debt. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 194. Chapter 189. 1 year. After accidentally solving the problem that had troubled Jill and the others for several days, Luo Guang brought the topic of this small meeting back to the original meeting discussion issue. Chris, Barry, Jill, and I entered the auction as invitees, and then confirmed the location of the biochemical virus on the ship, while you are waiting for our information outside, and then decide whether to destroy the virus or cover it up. And assisted Jill and me in our retreat. When introducing this matter before, Jill had already told Barry the location and how to enter the auction. Barry thought about the distance between the small island and the African continent, and said, yeah, but I don't think the distance is close. The helicopter doesn't have enough range to go back and forth. Even if we add auxiliary fuel tanks, there won't be much time for us to stay in the air. You support? So Chris and I will probably have to take a boat to pick you up. In this case, you need to allow us enough time, otherwise the daylilies will be cold by the time we arrive by boat. Jill nodded, and Barry's words unexpectedly made Luo Guang feel that what he had said to Susan before was still necessary. The role of a mobile fortress on the sea was not small. Of course, another thing is that it is best to taking off and landing helicopters. This new demand needs to be supplemented by Susan. By the way, do you need any weapons? My contact will prepare them for you, so you don't have to go to the local place to buy those junk goods. Guns are banned in Egypt, and Luo Guang didn't see Jill or the others carrying weapons. He had to contact Susan anyway, so he might as well settle the matter of weapons and equipment. When they heard that someone was helping to solve the problem of weapons and equipment, Barry and Chris were not polite. However, they did not rush to tell Luo Guang their favorite weapons. Instead, they continued to confirm the status of the mission with Luo Guang. After learning about the mission in detail, Barry and Chris began to think. As for Gil and Luo Guang, since they all have to go to the auction ship for action, they don't have to think too much and can just choose the pistols and knives they are used to. Luo Guang still used the Beretta M92 FS pistol, but Gil's choice was somewhat unexpected. This time, Jill chose a G21 pistol firing .45 ACP pistol ammunition. Although the grip of this pistol is much thicker, it is still within the acceptable range for Gil. Moreover, Barton is a master of firearm adjustment and can help Gil modify and adjust the weapon to make it more suitable for Gil's use. Although Jill used to use the Glock series with 9mm pistol bullets, she now wanted to try the Glock series with .45 ACP pistol bullets, so she switched to the commonly used G18 and G19 pistols. Just as Luo Guang entered his and Jill's requirements into his mobile phone, Barry quickly told Luo Guang their thoughts and requirements. Barry was a member of SWAT before STARS, and his favorite pistol weapon is the .44 caliber Merlin revolver. This gun is powerful, but its firepower is insufficient, so Barry hopes to use a weapon with a larger bullet capacity as his main weapon. And finally chose a Stoner 86 light machine gun that uses a standard barrel and ammunition belt. Although the more powerful and newer M249 light machine gun is now in service, Barry also has his reasons for choosing the Stoner 86 light machine gun. The first is that this light machine gun is lighter and the recoil is astonishingly low. When used on floating ships, it has more advantages than the M249 light machine gun. Another reason is that Patton has been exposed to a batch of Stoner 8249 light machine guns that were eliminated by the military before and is more familiar with them. On the other side, Chris is a former retired Air Force member of the Lighthouse Country, so his taste is closer to the standard equipment of the Lighthouse Country Army. He chose the M401 assault rifle and M9 pistol. Considering the needs of the mission, he chose to install a 4x32mm ACOG scope on the M401 assault rifle, which is conducive to mid-range support. Regarding the model of this ACOG scope, Chris specifically emphasized that he needed the TA-01 NSN model, because the NSN model only has a backup mechanical sight on the top of the scope, which can take into account the need for quick aiming in close combat. In addition to weapons and ammunition, we won't go into details about common equipment such as projectiles, body armor, and medical kits. After Luo Guang sent Jill and his needs to Susan, he entered them into his mobile phone according to Barry and Chris's requirements, and sent them to Susan again to start purchasing equipment and weapons. Most of these weapons are very easy to collect, but the TA-01 NSN model ACOG scope is used by the Special Forces of the Lighthouse Country. Not many people usually buy it, so Susan replied that she needed to confirm whether it was in stock. There was still more than half a month before the auction start time on the invitation letter, but Luo Guang and the others did not stay in Egypt for vacation, and began to move to Banana Port, a seaport in the Republic of Congo. It's still a long time before the auction starts, but the bustling seaport city is already undercurrent, and people from all kinds of countries can be seen in this port. Although Luo Guang has no evidence to confirm, he feels that these invitees have already their men were sent to collect information at this port. At this time, Luo Guang, Jill, Chris, and Barry were acting separately. Because they played different disguises, Luo Guang and Jill stayed in a hotel, while Chris and Barry rented a rental house for a month. Luo Guang and Jill dressed up as ordinary young lovers traveling to Congo. They strolled on the streets, but they did not focus on the dazzling street shops or the scenery full of local customs. Observe the topography of the harbor and confirm the environment of the harbor. It's not that a war or biological crisis will break out here, but since Luo Guang and the others are going to live here for a while, they still need to understand the environment here. Anyway, they don't have to work 9 to 5, so they have plenty of time. Robbery, take money. Luo Guang and Gil were checking for a shortcut, so they walked into the alley. Before they went deeper, they encountered two robbers. The two opponents were both about 14 to 15 years old, with thin bodies. One held a tetanus blade in his hand, and the other held a water pipe. Judging from the other party's expression, it seemed that this was their first robbery. His face was full of nervousness, and the hand holding the weapon was trembling slightly, making people worried that they would lose their weapon and hit their feet. If Luo Guang and the two were just ordinary people, they would have surrendered and given money long ago. Of course, they would not be stupid enough to take the alley. But unfortunately, Luo Guang is not an ordinary person. When facing an enemy with a knife, he can really attack with nothing. With a bare blade, you can tell others that if you are good at martial arts, you are not afraid of kitchen knives. Seeing someone blocking the road and robbing him, he got interested and wanted to tease the other person, so he stopped Gil, who was eager to show off his skills, and said, "Now is a rare occasion for a hero to save a beauty. Gil, you are holding your fist and you are not showing off to me. What an opportunity." As soon as Gil heard this, he relaxed, leaned against Luo Guang, and said like a little bird, "Well, husband, hurry up and drive away the bad guys." Luo Guang felt a little uncomfortable when he heard that Jill was deliberately acting coquettishly, but it was rare that Jill had such interest, so Luo Guang accepted it happily without spoiling the current atmosphere. Seeing the calm show of affection between the two people in front of them, one of the robbers waved the blade in his hand randomly and shouted, "What are you doing? Take out the money quickly. I know you Chinese like to carry a lot of cash when you go out of." He was obviously doing something illegal and criminal, but the other party didn't know how to hide it. Then Luo Guang reprimanded him, "Why are you shouting so loudly? Do you want to attract the police? Can you robbers be more professional? You are like this, it will be difficult for me to do." When the police came, how could he act like a hero saving the beauty? The other two were stunned by Luo Guang's words, while Jill beside Luo Guang secretly laughed. The two felt that they had been humiliated and cursed angrily, "Aren't you afraid of death? Don't wait and get the money out quickly, otherwise we won't be polite." In fact, they only shouted loudly to embolden themselves. As for being humiliated, in the face of food and clothing, would they, the poor and down and out people, still care about this? Why did you want to rob us? For money, why else? But you have hands and feet, wouldn't you be able to make money if you find a manual job? I think they won't cry until they see the coffin. One of them couldn't stand the other person, who seemed to have never experienced poverty, giving them advice. He raised the steel pipe and was about to hit Luo Guang's head. It seemed that he was going to hit Luo Guang on the head. Luo Guang was stunned and shut up. The opponent launched an attack on Luo Guang, and before the Ji-Dao duo could react, they were thrown directly to the ground by Luo Guang. Suddenly seeing the blue sky, the Ji-Dao duo were stunned. In the end, the pain coming from their bodies made them react and they fell to the ground. Luo Guang was also kind-hearted, and slightly protected the opponent's spine and head when he fell, so that he would not be killed or disabled. This is called Kung Fu, do you understand? In the future, if you learn how to rob people, you should have a longer memory and learn how to read people. For these pitiful and hateful people, Luo Guang no longer had any interest in pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger. He just said a word and left with Jill. He also needed to talk to the person arranged by Morpheus in advance, otherwise when the show starts, no one will take them on board. This incident was just a small episode. After that, Luo Guang never encountered the kind of plot where he beat the younger one, then the older one came, then the older one came, and then the older one came. As time passed, Luo Guang sent a report to the Red Claw troops and confirmed the preparations with the GIMZ troops. Under Hank's command, the combatants of the GIMZ unit are all ready. As for Corliss, the undercover agent of organization, the minister went to X organization in exchange for a status that matched his own. "Let's go," the organizer's car has arrived. The clothes Jill was wearing at this time were not formal clothes, but the same tactical uniform as Luo Guang, which was exactly the one Luo Guang gave to Jill before. Jill nodded. At this time, Jill was wearing the black cat mask that Luo Guang had prepared for her, and Luo Guang was also wearing a black cat mask, but his mask was a cartoon version of the image, while Jill's mask looked more serious and elegant, making people keep a respectful distance. Although this was an auction, Luo Guang considered General Grand's situation, so he did not change into clothes for formal occasions such as suits. This trip to the shower cruise ship was similar to the one in the Amazon rainforest. There was also a special person to pick up and drop off, but the person picking up and dropping off was not a professional waiter or receptionist, but a mercenary under Morpheus, so there was no need to count on the other party. What a great service attitude! The other party verified the invitation letter, then nodded to the car and motioned for Luo Guang and others to get in the car. After the two of them got in the car, the other party drove Luo Guang and the others all the way to the port, and boarded an unknown ship. Large and small tourist boats. Luo Guang also saw many people who accepted the invitation, and they all wore masks tacitly, or covered their faces with headscarves, only revealing a pair of hands and sharp eyes. "Hey, Sheriff Black Cat. Oh. There is an acquaintance there." Luo Guang heard a low-pitched cry from beside him. He turned around and looked around. He sensed the virus in the other person's body with a little induction. He immediately knew that the other person was the person who held the event at the Amazon Rainforest Monument Castle. The host of the auction is also the son of the black market force. Luo Guang said suddenly, "Oh, son." Originally, Keith Cobbs was a little unsure when he saw Luo Guang's black cat mask, so he greeted him with a doubtful tone. But as Luo Guang said son, he understood that the other party was just letting him go. "The person who lives. You can call me One Ear." As soon as Ji Xiu said this, Luo Guang realized that the mask the other person was wearing had the head of a brown mouse, but one ear was missing and it looked like it had been knocked off. It seemed that this was the inspiration for the other person's nickname. "Okay, but your dad is also very generous. Something happened before, and now he asks you to come over," Luo Guang said with a smile. "I am the police chief, and she is the black cat." Although the expression was blocked by the mask, Luo Guang noticed the helpless expression on the other side. "Oh, don't talk about it. Because of what happened before, I was beaten badly by my father. Not long after I came out of the hospital, my father rushed me here. This is how Ji Xiu and his family are. If they want to inherit, the family must grow and survive these trials." Looking at Luo Guang's mask, Ji Xiu kindly reminded him, "Your nickname is Sheriff. Isn't it too eye-catching?" Luo Guang shrugged and said nonchalantly, "It's up to you. Are you still worried about this?" Jill on the other side did not join the conversation, but observed others to confirm the situation here. The boat under their feet started to set off, and the four of them, Luo Guang, Gil, Ji Xiu and their bodyguards, changed places, slightly away from other people. "Chief, I remember that you have contact with the Red Claws. Is it the same this time? I don't know if the previous incident has cast a shadow on Jixiu. Jixiu is worried that something will go wrong at this auction. If this is the case, he has to hurry up and be prepared for everything." Jill pricked up her ears. She was a little curious about the tasks Luo Guang had done before. After Luo Guang sent a text message to Chris and the others, he shook his head and replied, "I have nothing to do with that place, we just happen to know each other. As for what you are worried about, I just want to say that I am here, and the rest you can experience it yourself." Although Luo Guang didn't say it explicitly, Ji Xiu already understood that this journey would definitely not go smoothly. It's just that no one present, including Luo Guang, could have imagined how great the impact of this incident would be. After that, I was very busy with work for a few days, so I couldn't do any coding. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 195. Chapter 190 Boarding the Shower. After Luo Guang and others arrived at the island by boat, they had to take an off-road vehicle to go around the island halfway and come to the port on the other side before undergoing the final identity check. Morpheus also took great pains to prevent certain enemies from tracking and confirming his location. As a researcher fired by Umbrella, Morpheus felt that this was a stain on him that Umbrella had engraved on him, so he had been acting for revenge against Umbrella, which attracted many sponsors for him. The luxury cruise ship Spencer Lane was one of the results of his revenge. After seizing the cruise ship, he cleared out the Umbrella executives on it and renamed the ship the Shower. The identity check at Banana Port was used to paralyze the enemy before, as long as they carried an invitation letter, but this time it was obviously more stringent and required identity confirmation. The reason why it was strict at this time was to solve the problem on the spot after finding the person who had sneaked in. Even if the other party found a chance to escape, he could not leave the island, and the mercenaries had plenty of time to hunt. General Grand's people, after checking the asset certificate brought by Luo Guang, the other party stopped Luo Guang and began to ask. Yes, Luo Guang's tone was calm. After checking the information in his hand, the other party said, "Sorry, Grand's quota is no longer valid." "Why? Do you think our general has no money?" Luo Guang made up these words easily and deceived the other party, playing the role of General Grand's loyal confidant, and he did not directly mention Grand's death. The other party was not angry. If Grande were alive, he would have restrained himself. But now he would only laugh and say, "What's the use of a dead person having money? It's just a bargain for others. This is the first time I know that money is divided into living and dead. And if it really is a bargain for others, how did I get this asset certificate?" Not giving the other party a chance to refute, Luo Guang continued to say, "The general has long known that there are traitors who want to harm him, so the wise general has been prepared. Otherwise, do you think we can take out so much money from the general's treasury?" The asset certificate Luo Guang brought contained tens of millions of US dollars. Of course, Luo Guang's current personal account did not have that much money, and the account of the GIMZ unit could not be used as an asset certificate. In the end, Luo Guang naturally chose the account of his good friend Donald's family. Anyway, to the Donald family, money is just a string of numbers, so they quickly sent Luo Guang an asset certificate. Jill was also shocked when she saw Luo Guang's friend was so generous. She didn't say a word, nor did she ask Luo Guang what he wanted the asset certificate for. She sent someone to deliver the asset certificate directly. However, she didn't ask too many details when she saw Luo Guang didn't mention it. Anyway, the money didn't belong to Luo Guang. He just took the certificate to deceive people. Humph, Grand's head was cut off and displayed to the public. It's not surprising that you, as his subordinates, divided up the money he had treasured for a lifetime. You should be Grand's confidant, so you should know where Grand's money is hidden, right? Are you talking about the head that you can't even tell whether it's a man or a woman? What can this prove? Although this is the other party's territory, Luo Guang is not at all false. He said this to imply that General Grande is not dead. Jishu, who was standing behind Luo Guang, looked at the conversation between the sheriff in front and the other party, and always felt an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. Luo Guang was so arrogant before in the Amazon ruins. However, Morpheus's mercenaries were different from the representatives of Umbrella at that time. He was just an assistant. Seeing Luo Guang's accurate and decisive reply, he was also confused. Could it be that General Grande was not dead? And even if he gave up his own territory, he would fake his death. Is this actually a huge conspiracy? This idea took root in his heart, and finally made him decide to report it to Morpheus, who didn't like to be disturbed. After listening to his subordinate's report in silence, Morpheus simply said let them go and hung up the phone. With Morpheus' words, Luo Guang and Jill boarded the cruise ship smoothly. This shower is worthy of being the cruise ship used by Umbrella to entertain the company's senior executives. The decoration is magnificent, but only the bloodstains were cleaned up in time, and the bullet holes on the wall were not filled in time. This made those who were born with a golden key or who had seen the world of the rich feel awkward and uncomfortable. They couldn't help but wonder if this was a show of strength from Morpheus. But they were overthinking. Morpheus didn't have so many tricks, otherwise he wouldn't have been a scapegoat and was kicked out of the company by Umbrella. Luo Guang and Jill didn't have these feelings, and they were not interested in luxurious decoration. After all the buyers and mercenaries boarded the ship, the shower started and began to head deep into the Atlantic Ocean. This process is not written in the invitation letter. Jill saw the shower sailing out of the island, pulled Luo Guang aside, and asked anxiously. Luo Guang nodded, knowing that this was still Morpheus's precautionary plan, and replied, "I will inform Chris and the others to stand by first, and come immediately when the ship stops. The plan can't keep up with the changes, so this is the only way." Jill thought so, looking at Luo Guang, who was sending a text message, and nudged Luo Guang with his elbow. "The one ear is coming." "Sergeant, this is the list of auction items like a little brother." Ji Xiu helped Luo Guang get the list and came over immediately. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Luo Guang took it and believed it more than what was written in the invitation letter, but it was basically an old product of the T-virus. So Luo Guang lost interest after taking a few glances, and handed it to Gil for inspection, while he asked Ji Xiu questions. "One ear, Morpheus hasn't come out to speak yet." "No, and my bodyguard thinks the atmosphere here is a bit weird, or depressing." Although Ji Xiu's father sent his son to the hospital, he still loved Ji Xiu very much and arranged a powerful bodyguard for him, who also served as Ji Xiu's combat skills teacher. Although this bodyguard is over 50 years old, he is still in good health. He came out of the jungles of Vietnam alive and has rich combat experience. Although he does not have much scientific basis, he firmly believes that he has a keen intuition, which is what drove him to brought out of the jungle. The bodyguard's name was Tyrone Henry, and he wore an eagle mask, so Ji Xiu asked Luo Guang and the others to call him Eagle. In fact, for Eagle, the thing that set off the alarm the most was the person wearing a funny cartoon black cat mask in front of him. Fortunately, his boss knew the other person and seemed to have a good relationship, so he did not react reflexively. "Get ready for battle." Even Yingying admires the ability of his boss's son, Ji Xiu, to bend and stretch. Luo Guang looked at the situation in the lobby of the ship. The buyers were communicating in twos and threes. It looked like a dazzling banquet of high society. However, Luo Guang quickly discovered the reason why Eagle Tailong felt depressed and said, "Murphy SI has arranged too many mercenaries in this venue, and has controlled the entrances and exits, forming a double team on the buyers." After Luo Guang's analysis, both Gil and Ji Xiu understood. Looking at the situation in the hall, they also noticed a hint of uneasiness after knowing the situation. There were 120 buyers present, including Luo Guang. Each of them could bring a follower, which added up to 240 people. Compared with the Shower cruise ship, which can accommodate thousands of people, the number of people entertained this time is a bit shabby. "Why don't you let me out? You have no power, let alone the qualification to stop me from leaving," a buyer with a very young voice shouted at the mercenaries guarding the door. He raised his right hand and slapped it hard with his index finger. "The chest of the mercenary in front of me." However, the mercenary standing in front of the opponent did not move at all, just letting the opponent do whatever they wanted. Some more cautious buyers have already begun to look for favorable terrain and available partners, and Luo Guang and the others immediately chose a good place to guard after coming in. The buyer who made the fuss spoke loudly, attracting a lot of people's attention, and the atmosphere changed. Now the atmosphere in the hall is indeed filled with something wrong and tense. A person who looked like a mercenary leader received Morpheus's message, stood in front of the host table, and said, "Please calm down. We are not restricting your freedom, it's just Dr. Morpheus who I am about to go on stage to meet you, so my people stopped the other party in order to prevent the guests from missing the opportunity." As if to verify the words of the mercenary leader, the figure of Morpheus appeared on the projection screen behind him. Morpheus Duval, wearing a black robe and shoulder-length white hair, looks very young. "Welcome to the shower." Morpheus's voice was very neutral, perfectly in line with his neutral face. "Please forgive me for not being able to arrive at the site because I was preparing various auction items. In fact, this shower is not the site of this auction." Although Morpheus asked everyone to forgive him, both Luo Guang and Ji Xiu understood that the other party was just here. "Say polite words." Morpheus watched the reactions of the buyers through the monitor and said, "The place where the rain is heading now is the abandoned research institute of Umbrella Corporation. You can see with your own eyes the biological and chemical weapons that are about to be auctioned." This was always more attractive than a dry report on the auction items. The noisy buyer also stopped and looked expectant. But some people don't think so, and this person is Jishiu. The representative of Umbrella Company said the same thing about the auction he hosted at the Amazon Heritage before, and brought the auction items to the auction site, and eventually a hijacking incident occurred. Jishiu, who was a little shadowed by this, looked at Luo Guang. He knew that Luo Guang was connected with the Red Claw Force. After hearing Morpheus talking about going to the abandoned research institute, he immediately contacted Luo Guang, who appeared here. "What's wrong?" Luo Guang noticed Jishiu's gaze and turned to look at him. Jishiu was caught peeking by Luo Guang. He smiled a little sheepishly and expressed his worries, while hiding his thoughts behind it. In fact, when Morpheus mentioned the abandoned research institute, Luo Guang immediately thought of the Atlantic Research Institute. The GIMZ troops should have set off for the Atlantic Research Institute at this time, which means that he and his troops are likely to be there. Meet. In other words, regardless of whether Morpheus is on the ship or not, the GIMZ force can attack the Atlantic Research Institute under the leadership of Luo Guang. "Jishiu, did you bring a gas mask?" Luo Guang said jokingly. "Don't accidentally inhale the virus in the research institute." Jishiu was not frightened by Luo Guang. He pointed to the backpack Tai Lung was carrying and said, "I have been prepared for it. There are 2 gas masks installed there." Luo Guang naturally thought of this. Anyway, the organizer didn't prohibit it, so they brought it along. "It will take about 5 days to get to the institute. I hope you can have a comfortable journey here. Next are some precautions on the ship," Morpheus continued, and there was no question and answer session. This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. First of all, the shower has only opened the accommodation areas on the upper deck and lower deck for everyone to use. As for the other places on the lower deck, it is where the mercenaries and service personnel live. In order to avoid conflicts, all guests can pay attention to this, so as not to a conflict occurred. After Morpheus said this, he said with a hint of threat, "After all, the mercenaries under my command are rough people. If there is a conflict, they may not be able to hold it back. It would be bad if there was bloodshed here." After all, the buyers were here to shop, so they naturally gave Morpheus the face of the auction and nodded to indicate that they would abide by the regulations. 3 days later, Luo Guang contacted GIMZ and Chris respectively to arrange the next plan. Jill, on the other hand, had just returned from going out to get information. She was not trying to find out the identities of the other buyers, but to find out about the commotion the day before yesterday, when it was said that uninvited guests had sneaked aboard the shower. The mercenaries patrolling the deck at the time heard a strange noise coming from the stern of the ship and went to check it out. As a result, they did not see anyone, but found a hook on the railing along the ship's edge. After further investigation, they found traces of someone living on the lifeboat hanging at the stern of the ship, and found a chocolate wrapper, so they concluded that someone had secretly got on the boat. However, the man disappeared, and so far, the mercenaries have not found the mysterious man. "Luo Guang, I discovered one thing. Those mercenaries don't seem too worried about the mysterious man." "What should I say?" Luo Guang put away his phone and asked. Gil organized his language and said, "Didn't we confirm the number and appearance of the mercenaries on the ship before? Then I just counted it and found that they did not continue to search for the mysterious man and resumed normal patrols. The activity range of those patrolling mercenaries is basically the activity area of buyers like Luo Guang. That means they value us more than the mysterious man." Gil shook his head and said, "I think their target has been us from beginning to end." While Luo Guang and the others were discussing the situation, Ji Xiu came over with his bodyguard Tai Lung. Ji Xiu looked solemn, put away his previous cynicism, and said seriously. Chief, we may have been tricked again. Back pain meow. Very busy too, meow. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 196. Chapter 191 The Threat of Morpheus. This word is very essential. Luo Guang did not have much reaction to Ji Xiu's words. Jill picked up the topic and asked, what happened? A chemical crisis has broken out on the ship. Ji Xiu didn't have time to reply, and after Tai Lung closed the door, he gasped and said anxiously. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Tai Lung then told Luo Guang and the others what he saw, and at the same time corrected Ji Xiu's statement. First of all, the biohazard hasn't really broken out yet. I sneaked into those forbidden areas to conduct reconnaissance and found that the bottom cargo hold of the ship was full of zombies, and the chefs here were cooking with those zombies, so I think the buyers, including us, may have been infected with the virus. That's disgusting. Gil frowned and said something, feeling grateful that Luo Guang always had a lot of food and water in his backpack. Tai Lung and Ji Xiu were not so lucky. What they thought would only be completed in a day or so ended up dragging on for more than half a week, so they didn't bring any food or watercraft. Ji Xiu didn't have any physical nausea, just because he had already vomited when he heard the news and had vomited up. The mercenary who inspected naturally knew that Luo Guang had brought a lot of food and water, but he did not think that Luo Guang and the others would be indifferent to the delicacies, and in order to prevent others from becoming suspicious, they did not confiscate the supplies that Luo Guang brought. Of course, for Luo Guang and Gil, eating these things will definitely not cause them to contract the virus and turn into zombies. But you guys seem to be okay, Luo Guang reacted and asked strangely. We all received the latest mass-produced T-virus vaccine before we came here. Hearing Ji Xiu's words, Luo Guang briefly sensed the virus in Ji Xiu's body. The T-Veronica virus seemed not to be affected by the vaccine and was still lurking in his body. However, it is possible that a biological crisis broke out, but the actions of Morpheus's mercenaries have not changed so far. And when I just went out to collect intelligence, there was no notice that anyone felt unwell. Gil told Ji Xiu and the others the information he had collected. Tai Long shook his head and said, I don't know the specific situation. After I came back from the kitchen, I went directly to the boss to report this important information. Then after the boss finished vomiting, he immediately took Tai Long to Luo Guang to discuss the situation. Over in the kitchen, the mercenaries who knew the situation were afraid and unwilling to go there, so Tai Lung took advantage of the opportunity and sneaked in. If that's the case, a crisis should have broken out on the first day, right? And wouldn't it be enough to just spread poisonous gas containing the T-virus? Jill wondered. Maybe it's because it's been cooked, Luo Guang said simply. Ji Xiu was more concerned about the second question and quickly asked Tai Lung to take out the gas mask. I think we should figure out Morpheus's conspiracy first. Luo Guang said, the difference between the current situation and the use of biochemical poison gas is that survivors will be left behind. Perhaps this is why biochemical poison gas is not used. Is it possible that this is to prevent those mercenaries from being accidentally injured? After all, poisonous gas is difficult to control. The mercenaries have their own canteen and don't eat with the buyers and others, Ji Xiu said with a look of seeing through the truth. That's not clear without intelligence support, Luo Guang couldn't figure it out, so he could only do it on foot. Jill on the other side thought of something and said, although it is difficult to control the range of poisonous gas, what if we all sleep in the house? Then wouldn't it be easy to control the range? Hearing Gil's words, Jixio immediately looked at the air conditioner and vents in the room. There's one more thing. I don't know if it's my misunderstanding anyway, it's all speculation, so Tai Lung also told the information he was unsure of. I found that there were many surveillance cameras in the area where we were active, but in other areas, such as my way to the kitchen, there was not even a surveillance camera installed along the way. So the mysterious talent has not been caught before. It seems that he went to a place without surveillance, and the area is quite large. This verifies what Yingying said from the side. What Jill meant was that the surveillance cameras on the ship definitely did not cover all passages, which was unreasonable. It means these surveillance cameras are specially used to monitor us. This was Ji Xiu's first reaction. Luo Guang heard the conversation between the two and had a little guess in his mind, but he quickly rejected this theory himself. Because there is no need for Morpheus to announce the dangers of the biochemical crisis caused by the T-virus again in order to continue to retaliate or slander Umbrella, which will collapse and be divided at any time. Seeing that Jill and the others were still discussing, but basically had no new ideas, Luo Guang finally made a concluding statement and ended the discussion. Anyway, we should be ready. Morpheus did not keep Luo Guang and others waiting. On the day they arrived at the Atlantic Research Institute today, a biological crisis broke out on the ship through the use of biochemical gas. And to the surprise of the mercenaries, they who had been solving problems for Morpheus were directly sacrificed by Morpheus without mercy, filled with hatred in the biochemical gas. Became a member of the zombies. Since all the mercenaries were dead, Luo Guang and Ji Xiu formed a four-man team, wearing gas masks, and ran from the room to the deck to ensure that they would not be threatened by the biochemical gas again. On the other hand, according to the mercenary leader's idea, in the plan confirmed by him and Morpheus, his mercenaries would not sacrifice at all, and would help drive the survivors who escaped the gas back into the gas. However, the time of the appearance of the biochemical gas was advanced, and even the gas that would have flowed only to the buyer's room flowed into the mercenaries' room along the ventilation duct. In order to prevent alerting the enemy, the mercenaries did not carry gas masks with them, but stored the gas masks in a special locker. But when they ran over there and hurriedly opened the locker where the gas masks were stored, they found that the locker had been pried open and the gas masks inside had been artificially destroyed. The biochemical gas approached the mercenaries, and when their leader found that the stored gas masks were gone, he immediately thought of snatching them from the buyers. Back to Luo Guang, they were already on guard, so they put on gas masks before inhaling the biochemical gas. At this time, they were waiting for the biochemical gas to dissipate, and then they would capture the cabin of the shower, sail back to the port, and rely on the national power of the port to solve this biochemical crisis. While they were waiting, two people rushed to the deck, and then tore off the intact gas masks on their faces, breathing in the fresh air. Two people, one man and one woman. One of them was wearing a simple black and gray shirt without any patterns, and took out a can of disinfectant and sprayed it on himself and the woman next to him. The woman accepted the disinfectant with a look of disgust, took some with her hand, and rubbed it on her exposed skin. "Hello, are you here to get some fresh air too?" In this situation, only Luo Guang was in the mood to joke. "I know that woman, she is a waiter on the ship." Ji Xiu recognized one of them and whispered. The waitress's name was Fang Ling. She was working alone outside and was then recruited to the shower. However, Luo Guang could see some traces of military training from her movements. The man on the other side called himself Bruce McGivern, and his identity was naturally the mysterious man who smuggled onto the shower. This was directly said by Fang Ling, and it seemed that she had bad intentions and was not on the same side as Bruce. Bruce understood the other party's identity by looking at the clothes of Luo Guang and the other four. Considering the good things Morpheus did on the ship, he decided to try to win over the other party to help him complete the mission. It was a bit unexpected that this Bruce was an agent under the Special Operations Command of the Lighthouse Country. Luo Guang had heard that the unit Bruce belonged to was an anti-Umbrella pursuit team established after the public trial of the Umbrella Corporation. After studying in the Red Claws, Krauser returned to that team as an instructor. As for Leon, due to his age, he could only continue to study under instructor Krauser. Leon was very puzzled that his former comrade in arms suddenly became his instructor, and he even sent an email to Claire to complain. You so-called buyers are actually victims of Morpheus. When the biochemical gas was sprayed out in the ship, Morpheus found the big men of the Lighthouse Country and the Oriental Country. Bruce told the information he heard from the satellite receiver and said, even if you buyers are rich, you are not as rich as the country. That guy Morpheus dared to threaten two world powers. If you don't pay Morpheus $5 billion within the specified time, he will launch missiles to send biochemical gas to various developed cities in the two countries. The biochemical crisis and the tragic situation on the ship have been made into a video and shown to the bigwigs of the two countries. Oh, a total of $10 billion, no wonder we can only become victims. But I am curious about one question. Even if he is really given $10 billion, which bank can he keep it in? And is the promise made by this guy trustworthy? It is also very likely that he will take the money and not do the work. What if he threatens again later? Luo Guang doesn't believe in the myth of Swiss banks, and he thinks that any normal person will not agree to the other party's conditions. Bruce shrugged his shoulders when he heard Luo Guang's question, saying that he didn't know either. His mission was to stop Morpheus. On the contrary, Fang Ling fell into deep thought after hearing Luo Guang's words. Luo Guang didn't know whether the other party's name was real. Anyway, he and Ji Xiu and others only reported their code names. After seeing that Luo Guang didn't reveal his identity as a special operations team member of the Red Claw Force, Jill secretly glanced at Luo Guang and thought that Luo Guang might have made the decision to hide his identity because he didn't trust Bruce's identity. By the way, what are you going to do next? Jixiu is very good at dealing with people, and he won't easily do anything to invite enemies. Find Morpheus. If he is not on the ship, turn the ship around and ask other countries to help solve the biochemical crisis on the ship. Bruce's plan is similar to Luo Guang's. After confirming that Luo Guang has no objection, Jixiu invited Bruce. Bruce naturally welcomes someone to help him. On the contrary, Fang Ling has been silent. After the poison gas dissipates, she will act independently. Bruce stopped her and said, "It's too dangerous for you to be alone. No matter who you are, you should be united in dealing with Morpheus, right?" However, Fang Ling did not appreciate it. She slapped Bruce's hand away and replied, "I don't need your help." As she said that, Fang Ling took out a pistol with a silencer from her body, put on a gas mask, left Luo Guang and the others, and walked to the lower deck. Bruce wanted to chase after him, but he had just agreed to Ji Xiu's invitation. Go after him. Luo Guang looked like he was watching a show. He thought Bruce might have a crush on Fang Ling. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Thank you, I'm worried about a girl acting alone. Bruce, who was full of justice, found an excuse for himself and left without looking back. Bruce and Fang Ling set off to the lower deck. Luo Guang and the others could just stagger the search for the room above the deck. It happened that the cabin of the ship was above the deck, and Luo Guang and the others could occupy it first. Ji Xiu was the weakest of the four. When he heard that he was weak, he nodded sincerely, saying that he must protect him. Although Tyrone's combat effectiveness is guaranteed, his identity is after all Jixiu's bodyguard. This guy might take Jixiu away in a critical moment, so Luo Guang was worried about this guy leading or covering the rear, so he let him follow behind him, followed by Jixiu and Jill. Normally, Jixiu and Tyrone should be arranged separately, but there is still a certain trust between the two sides. Tyrone will definitely not agree to this plan, and Luo Guang's own ability is guaranteed, so Luo Guang did not propose this plan. There are thousands of people on the shower, so for Luo Guang and his team, there is still bullet pressure, so the weapons on the mercenaries have become one of Luo Guang and his team's targets. When the poison gas was spreading, because the buyers were sleeping, the mercenaries mostly patrolled the lower deck, so Luo Guang and his team did not find the weapons they needed in the buildings on the upper deck. Luo Guang and his team even needed to spend bullets to deal with several wandering waiter zombies and those surveillance cameras one by one. The smooth journey made Jixio this guy get carried away. These zombies move so slowly, it seems I can easily deal with them. Old man, why don't you leave one for me to try and exercise? Tyrone was about to answer, but suddenly there was a bang, and the double wooden doors of the hall were smashed open. That guy will be left to you. Luo Guang looked at the monster that appeared and said, it should be a tyrant-type biological weapon. The tyrant in front of him had an exposed heart, a major organ, sticking out from the back, making it more vulnerable to attack. It was different from most tyrants Luo Guang had seen. It had no claws, but tentacles, just like its fingers. Sorry to bother you. After saying that, Jixio, who had a shadow over the tyrant, consciously withdrew from the team and found a place to hide, so as not to become a burden to the other three. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 197. Chapter 192 Tentacle Tyrant and Chef Zombie. The skin color of the tyrant in front of him is a rare white-gray color, which looks sick. Some brown channels like tree roots appear on the skin, and the overall appearance is thinner than other tyrants, while its arms are red, and the 5 fingers have become tentacles, hanging down to the floor. Another point is quite different, that is, the mouth and nose of this tyrant are connected together, there are no nostrils, and the eyes are white, but it can accurately find the location of Luo Guang and others. Luo Guang has never seen this type of tyrant, so he is not sure whether this tyrant is a new type of tyrant cultivated by Morpheus using T/G synthetic virus. According to the more recognizable tentacles of the tyrant in front of him, Luo Guang temporarily named this tyrant the Tentacle Tyrant. Without a roar of greeting, the Tentacle Tyrant raised his hands horizontally, and the tentacles that were originally drooping instantly straightened and flew towards the position of Luo Guang and others. There is no sharp object like bone spurs at the front of the tentacles, but it does not mean that people cannot be pierced without a gun head, so Luo Guang and others quickly dispersed. At this point, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. Hide behind the pillar. Tyrone saw that the solid wood furniture was easily pierced by the tentacles of the Tentacle Tyrant, and immediately asked Jixio to hide behind a more solid pillar. Jill and Tyrone all fired back. Jill's bullet accurately hit the head of the Tentacle Tyrant, while Tyrone's bullet basically hit the body of the Tentacle Tyrant. According to the normal human body structure, Tyrone hit the liver and heart. However, the Tentacle Tyrant is just a monster with a human form, and Tyrone's bullet did not play much role. Jill's bullet hit the head of the Tentacle Tyrant. Although the appearance is different and the head is surprisingly hard, it still caused damage to the Tentacle Tyrant. On the other side, Luo Guang was still trying to distance himself from Jill and the others, and attack the Tentacle Tyrant from the side and rear, so Luo Guang was not present in the previous counterattack. Luo Guang did not shoot, and was not trying to fish in troubled waters. Instead, he quickly touched the right rear side of the Tentacle Tyrant, and formed a 3-way trap with Jill and Tyrone. Although the main attack method of the Tentacle Tyrant is the tentacle attack, those tentacles are evolved from 10 fingers after all, so the Tentacle Tyrant can only attack the second person in 2 directions at most. Jill and Luo Guang also had a tacit understanding, and after the first round of counterattacks, they also started to run to the left. As for Tyrone, Jixio was behind him, so he did not move in a large range. Seeing the actions of Luo Guang and the others, he praised them in his heart. Although it was only a temporary response strategy, it had an unexpected gain. Luo Guang saw the hard part exposed behind the Tentacle Tyrant. Luo Guang immediately told Jill and Tyrone this information. Jill and Tyrone did not make any other moves after hearing it, but waited for the opportunity. First, Luo Guang shot at the weak spot on the back of the tentacle tyrant. The only thing that limited Luo Guang's shooting speed was the pistol itself. The tentacle tyrant was hit by several bullets on the weak spot on the back, causing serious damage. To support the movement of such a tall body of the tentacle tyrant, a huge and powerful heart is indispensable, so the tentacle tyrant did not hesitate at all and kept urging the power in his body to repair the damaged heart. At the same time, the tentacle tyrant turned his body, facing Luo Guang, and started to attack with his stretched tentacles. Luo Guang rolled over to avoid the attack, then immediately stood up, lowered his body and ran, hiding behind the pillar, and defended against the sweep of the tentacle tyrant. The tentacle tyrant did not gain anything in the two attacks, and wanted to continue attacking to make the tentacles soft, so as to bypass the pillar and attack Luo Guang. But Jill would not sit and watch the tentacle tyrant attack, and immediately attacked the weak spot on the back of the tentacle tyrant. Unfortunately for the tentacle tyrant, it was not just Jill. The tentacle tyrant's weakness also appeared in Tyrone's shooting range, so Tyrone fired without hesitation, and stopped shooting until the last bullet in the magazine was sent into the chamber. This is Tyrone's habit. During combat and certain missions, his weapon always keeps a bullet in the chamber. In order to prevent accidental discharge, Tyrone uses a Sigma SW40P pistol from SW Company, which adopts a unique safety design. The trigger of the gun is divided into two sections from the appearance and is hinged together. When the shooter pulls the trigger, the lower part of the trigger moves back 6 mm first, then releases the safety, and the upper part of the trigger moves back and finally fires the bullet. In addition to the exposed trigger safety, there is a firing pin safety inside the sleeve. This firing pin safety card is in front of the firing pin, which can prevent the firing pin from being accidentally released when the pistol falls. This double safety design allows the pistol to fire only after the shooter pulls the trigger, so Tyrone dares to do this. After replacing a new magazine, Tyrone did not put the old one back, but threw it aside. On the other hand, Jill, who had used up all the bullets, and Luo Guang, who hid behind a pillar and took the opportunity to change the magazine, both put the empty magazines back. This is because Luo Guang and Jill have both experienced the biochemical crisis, and this world is not a game. If there are bullets but no magazines, the gun may be worse than a fire stick. Oh, it can also be used to give yourself a shot of relief. Back to the battle situation, this tentacle tyrant only has the unique skill of tentacles. Even if it wants to attack a little bit, the pain caused by the weakness on its back and the instinctive reaction of its body will make it only struggle when surrounded by Luo Guang and the others, and finally collapse. The ground cannot rise. This tyrant doesn't feel very strong. Ji Xiu was still on the run, so he didn't know how the Amazon tyrant was dealt with before, and Luo Guang naturally didn't tell him. Therefore, Jixiu's image of the tyrant was still in the combat test video shown to him by the representative of Umbrella Company, so he was so emotional when he saw the tentacle tyrant being so easily knocked down by several people with pistols. Luo Guang glanced at Jixiu, and then focused on the strange tentacle tyrant. Compared with the T-103 tyrant produced by Umbrella or those mass-produced tyrants, the energy stored in this tentacle tyrant's body is much less, and the bullet consumption is much less than Luo Guang imagined. That's because there are more of us, and that guy's weakness was exposed. Gil, who had faced the goddess of revenge, shook his head and said. Luo Guang didn't have any materials with him that could destroy the body of the tentacle tyrant, so he asked Ji Xiu and the others. Both Ji Xiu shook their heads, and Ji Xiu replied, who would have thought that an auction would require these things? And you can't bring them in. Luo Guang spread his hands, smiled, and said, in this case, let's move on. Don't get close to the body of this tentacle tyrant. Who knows whether this tyrant can fake the corpse? Luo Guang's words made Ji Xiu take out his mobile phone and stop taking pictures with the tentacle tyrant. Just as Luo Guang and the others were heading towards the cab, control room, of the shower, Bruce was following Morpheus with an AX-74U short-barreled assault rifle. It wasn't that Bruce chose to give up on finding Fang Ling's traces, but he found clues to the location of Morpheus from a mercenary corpse. Morpheus usually stayed in the captain's cabin at the stern of the ship, and there was also the second person of the shower there. The control room, from where the entire shower can also be controlled. Although Bruce has a love at first sight attraction for Fang Ling, it does not mean that he will forget his own selfishness for the sake of public service. He is famous among his comrades for his reckless behavior when completing tasks. He also has a strong sense of justice and is willing to die for his ideals. As for the AX-74U short-barreled assault rifle in Bruce's hand, it was naturally found from the mercenary's corpse. Of course, Bruce accepted all the materials such as the tactical vest, corresponding magazines, and projectiles one by one, and placed them properly on the tactical vest. The Special Operations Command naturally obtained the structural drawings of the shower from the production shipyard, but after special modifications by Umbrella, the map in Bruce's hand could only be used as a reference. The captain's cabin is in the stern area of the ship, and there are many places to pass. The first stop is the kitchen. Hearing the sound of fighting coming from the kitchen, there was a clanging sound, as if some big project was being carried out, and the zombie corpses on the ground with gunshot wounds to the heads also let Bruce know that he had encountered survivors. I just don't know if the survivor is Fang Ling. Carefully, Bruce came to the door of the kitchen and carefully explored the situation inside. Then he saw Fang Ling holding a pistol and fighting a giant in chef's uniform. The giant has obviously turned into a zombie, his skin has rotted, and his movement speed is not as agile as that of humans. Perhaps it was because he was a chef by profession, so even if the giant turned into a zombie, he still held a huge bone-chopping knife in his hand. However, the chef zombie was 2 meters tall, so the bone-chopping knife was a bit awkward in his hand. Like a kitchen knife. Fang Ling wanted to escape from the cook zombie, but the hatch on the other side was closed and the door lock needed to be twisted again to open, so Fang Ling wanted to make the cook zombie temporarily stop its actions. Fang Ling's identity is not simple, so she has intelligence support and knows that the zombie's weak point is located in the head, and when she encounters the cook zombie, she immediately attacks the cook zombie with the weapon in her hand, but the head of the cook zombie is covered with a lot of soft flesh. Surrounded by fat, he still successfully blocked the 9mm bullet from the weapon in Fang Ling's hand. These fats are not ordinary. Due to the physical condition of the cook zombie, the T-virus specifically strengthened the strength of the cook's body fat and its ability to store energy. As a result, Fang Ling, who had emptied several magazines, was still unable to stop the cook zombie's actions. Even the bullet holes made previously have been restored to their original appearance. Fortunately, the height of the kitchen was low, which made it very inconvenient for the giant to move. On the other hand, Fang Ling's movements were very flexible. She avoided the heavy bone-chopping knife attacks of the chef zombies time and time again. She was already retreating and wanted to change directions to the stern. But what Fang Ling was worried about was not a problem for the AX-74U short-barrel assault rifle in Bruce's hand. Bruce raised his gun and fired a precise short burst. The 5.45 x 39 mm bullet easily broke through the cook zombie's fat defense, destroyed the cook zombie's brain, and helped Fang Ling eliminate the cook zombie in one fell swoop. Fang Ling's face was frosty and she looked at Bruce, but she was wearing gas masks on both sides, so Bruce didn't see Fang Ling's expression. "Finally found you. Are you okay?" "Hey, wow," Bruce said, smiling a bright, meaningless smile inside his gas mask. Bruce's words were interrupted by Fang Ling, who kept approaching. Fang Ling did not interrupt with her mouth, but with a low sweep of her legs. Bruce stepped back to dodge the opponent's low sweep, and then did not fight back, but continued to distance himself, and hurriedly said, "Hey. We are on the same side, all." "Nonsense. Fang Ling seemed to have misunderstood Bruce's words. The organization behind her only sent her to perform the mission, so her attack became more fierce, and she kept getting closer to Bruce, which was to limit the use of Bruce's weapon. But Bruce's combat effectiveness was not low, and he defended Fang Ling's attack very well. Because he was operating in the ship, the butt of the Ax-74U in Bruce's hand was folded up, and the total length after folding was only 490 mm. Bruce, who immediately distanced himself from Fang Ling, could actually shoot and kill Fang Ling directly. Fang Ling on the other side was not afraid of bullets, but the training she had undergone made her a warrior willing to sacrifice at any time. However, in the current situation, Bruce had no intention of attacking Fang Ling, and was still trying to convince Fang Ling that he had no ill intentions, but Fang Ling did not respond, and had noticed the obstacles on the ground behind Bruce. It's all to stop Murphy's plot. We shouldn't. This time, it wasn't Fang Ling who interrupted Bruce's words, but the debris on the ground tripped Bruce, who was retreating. Taking this opportunity, Fang Ling successfully snatched the Ax-74U without a gun belt from Bruce's hand, and then immediately turned the gun muzzle to aim at Bruce. Bruce was also very honest in the face of this situation. He didn't shoot, but it didn't mean that the other party wouldn't shoot, so he raised his hands directly. Throw the vest over, slowly. Fang Ling gave the order, and Bruce didn't dare to disobey. The plot in the movie where you throw things to block the enemy's sight, and then slip away or counterattack before the other party reacts, was not staged here. Bruce's instructor once took him to verify the statement, and he didn't succeed once. Fang Ling, who was on guard against Bruce, picked up the tactical vest thrown on the ground with one hand, and held the gun with one hand, with his eyes and the muzzle facing Bruce all the time, and then slowly left the kitchen. She didn't take off my pistol. It seems that she has me in her heart. Bruce felt good about himself and muttered to himself to ease his helplessness at this moment. The situation at this moment was indeed not very good. Thinking of his mission, Bruce stood up and held his pistol again. In the previous battle, although Bruce's words did not get any response, Fang Ling's attack action paused slightly when she heard the words "Stop Morpheus's conspiracy," so Bruce felt that the intuition that the other party had the same goal as him was correct. Judging from Fang Ling's name, Bruce guessed that the other party might be an agent of the Eastern country at this time. After checking the pistol, Bruce cheered up and continued to set off and walk to the stern. Anyway, he and Fang Ling had the same goal, so they would meet again sooner or later. Alas, stupid colleague, otherwise I could update more words today, sorry.